you're drinking like Marco Fassbender's personal hell, but I'm drinking something that just makes me like not sure what I'm actually drinking because it's called Elvis juice. I was like, is this Elvis? Like, right it off.
Be careful with that.
And welcome down to the abyssal layer of the Radiophonic Sea Creatures. Stick your dick in a mouth and your face in a snatch because it's episode 69! And I, Tokyo Choo Choo, am going to be your host today. And with me today are two men who do the 69 so much with each other that it's become known as the 138. It's Human Metal and Brack. How are you guys? How are you, Human Metal?
Well, at least you can still do math. So I'm proud of you.
Oh man, you wait to the outro. I got a great math-based joke.
Anyway, math like, jokes are the best.
You just know that Choo Choo has like people like stuck in his basement and it's like stitched together like Human Centipede style, only in like the 69 form. You just know that's what Choo Choo has in his basement right there.
Oh man, that's awesome.
That's not awesome.
Don't give him ideas. Fuck. You enabler. Oh, god damn it. Fuck. Well, This episode is already ruined.
Yeah, for
in
sure.
my head, anyway.
Well, your head's ruined just permanently.
Chuchu, what are we gonna do today?
Oh yes, today. So today is our celebration episode. So most people do it at 50. We're doing it at 69. It's 2019 right now. Next year is 2020. Would you believe that? So we are going to be talking about the very, very best games of the last decade. So each of us have chosen 5 games. Today we're actually going to do in a special order. We're going to go chronologically. Is chronologically a special order? It's not that special, is it really?
Like,
but
you would centipede all our top 5 lists together to make one giant top 15 list.
Yeah, so the shit trickles down, but these things aren't shit. They're as well. You just feed gold in the mouth, and gold comes out the other end. Mm-hmm. Goes in gold, comes out gold, because it's all gold on this episode, baby. Although, if you put gold into a human... No, that doesn't make any sense, because alchemy, you actually need to change something. But
no, it's just refined.
Yeah, although...
Put a game disc on one end and beautiful gaming memories come out the other. Like, that's how it works.
Yeah, you see, I'm just imagining someone actually trying to swallow a game disc now, and it's not nice.
Yeah.
And pooping out like broken shards.
Painful, very painful.
Anyway, we should really launch straight into the first game because we have 15 games to get through. No, we're not going to launch into the first game. Sorry, I'm getting all confused. But first, we have a few honorable mentions, games that didn't make our list. So we're going to very quickly go through a list of honorable mentions. Just kind of give you, a list of honorable mentions. Nothing else to say about that. Human Metal, what are your honorable mentions?
Well, my honorable mentions technically would be the entries that are on your lists, because I didn't put them on mine because they're already on yours. So I'm like, okay, I get to talk about these games anyway, so I'm not going to put them on my list. But there are also a bunch of games that I, from the recent years, that I just didn't, I wasn't able to, or didn't find the time to play yet, like Last Guardian, like Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Devil May Cry 5, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, a bunch of these, Nier Automata. Like, there are a bunch of games that could very well, judging from what I've heard of them, have been Games of the Decade candidates, but I just didn't get around to play them yet. So, yeah, those, I guess, are my honorable mentions. All the games that came out in the last, 2 to 3 years that I just didn't get to yet. So don't be surprised if none of these are on the list.
All right. Well, Brack, what are your honorable mentions?
So I don't have a list of honorable mentions. I just have a list of some of my favorite gaming moments, and that just didn't fit in my top 5 list. And one is whenever you have a good puzzle in Portal 2 and it all clicks together and you just feel like a bloody genius. That's one of my favorite moments.
Because those moments are rare. Let's be honest.
Rare. I don't feel like a genius very often. whenever like a game lets me explore like a real life location that I might never go to in real life, or that I can't explore in the same way in real life, and an example of that is Yakuza or San Francisco in Watch Dogs 2. Another of my favorite gaming moments is winning a Battle Royale game for the first time. You know, that just like a really amazing feeling. You feel like a genius again, only like you just feel like the best player of all time for like a few seconds. So that's awesome. I really like playing Super Hot in VR for the first time, which is also like it's just like amazing feeling. You have like the powers of Neo for like a few minutes, and you actually like feel like you're in that world. And one of my last favorite moments is the final set piece in Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Like, it's not my favorite Uncharted game, or like my not my favorite Naughty Dog game either. But that final set piece is just so good. Like, it made the entire game perfect for me, and it's just like one of the best set pieces you'll ever see in any game of all time.
Was pretty great.
Yeah.
Also, speaking of Uncharted, I think Uncharted 4 is not on any of our lists. How did that happen?
For me, it's because I don't want to pick two Naughty Dog games.
Yeah, I guess.
Also, because like Uncharted 4 is not my favorite Uncharted game. So
yeah,
like,
me neither. I guess that's what it was. It's like,
it would be. It's like it's a great game for me, and I know Twitter doesn't like it that much, but it's just not my favorite Uncharted game. It's like it feels kind of like a waste, like picking like a game in a franchise that's not my favorite game in that franchise.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. And I love that game, but it's like I probably like Uncharted 2 more or whatever. And I still think it's a great ending. But speaking of Super Hot VR, let me tell you, that game is only amazing if both of your fucking move controllers work. If they don't, and you have this fucking flinchy hand that turns upside down all the time, and it's
that's
a real
just playing
hassle.
at extra difficulty.
Yeah, I guess. I tried to play it one-handed, right? Like everything else in life. But that didn't work out, so I ordered a new move controller, and hopefully I'll get to play that too. But yeah, that was... check your move controllers, guys. So.
It seems that we each have a theme for our honorable mentions list. Humetal's games he didn't play, Braxis' moments. Mine are my honorable mentions are dedicated to the B+ players, the games that are never quite gonna make the grade to the A grade, but you loved anyway. So for me, Assassin's Creed Syndicate is a great B+ player game. I love the Assassin's Creed franchise. That was the peak of the franchise for me. I haven't played the newer ones like Origin, so I can't really comment on those. But yeah, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, excellent game, but a little flawed. Yakuza 0, also on Brack's honorable mention list, just a really, really fantastic game, but a B+ game. Never quite going to make the A grade, but just absolutely fantastic times. Loved it. Alien Isolation. I'm a huge Alien fan, and that is the best Alien game of all time, and it came out in this decade. Love it to bits. Not quite an A game, but almost there. Sonic's All-Star Racing, specifically the second one, Transformed, as good as kart racing gets. Fantastic. Always going to be overshadowed by Mario Kart, of course. Never going to make the A grade, but was fantastic times. And finally, on a very personal note, and many people are just going to go, the WWE 2K games. So I played like 2K.
You fucking troll.
I played like SmackDown versus Raw 2011, 2K13, 2K16, and 2K19, and they were all really fun. And I've put in an inordinate amount of hours. I think I've played those games, way more than I have any other game on my on this list for damn sure, because I'm such a huge wrestling mark. So there you go, good fun. Of course, I'm not going to touch the new one because that's a fucking shit show. And there you go. So now we are out of the honorable mentions, and we're going straight into the first game on our best of the decade list. And we're heading into the year of 2010 here. So I'm going to hand you over to Brack.
So I actually had to check out if this game even came out in this decade. Like, that's how old it is. It came out like at the very, very beginning. But it's the first Red Dead Redemption. And actually, it's not the first Red Dead; it's the second Red Dead. But like nobody remembers the first Red Dead. It's like a game.
What is Red Dead Revolver? Fuck.
Yeah, there's the reason they called the newest game Red Dead Redemption 2, because everybody remembers the first Red Dead Redemption. At the time, it was really breathtaking the way it looks. It was the first game I ever played on a flat screen, which is also damn that ages me a little bit. But gorgeous game. I love the story. I just love the environment. I remember the moments where I just like walking at night on my horse and like looking at the beautiful stars, like, oh, this is just awesome. And then the story is just like this great combinations of like pulp western, like spaghetti westerns, but like with a little bit more heart to it, like a main character that you really fall for and really root for. And overall, just like I just loved everything about it. Like it's a reason it's put in my top 5. It's just like such a perfect game. And I know at least one of you has played it as well. And I'm pretty sure it's not you and Metal, but it's Chuchu. Chuchu, you've played it. You loved it, right?
Yes, of course I love Red Dead Redemption. At the time when it came out, Red Dead Redemption was an incredibly, incredibly special game for me. Like a lot of people, when it first came out, I was really confused by it. And I played it like you would Grand Theft Auto, you know, like hog-tying everybody and shooting everybody. And it was only when I really kind of realized that wasn't the way you were supposed to play it. And actually, you were supposed to really engage with the storytelling and play it as a kind of like like a hero out for kind of redemption, or a bad guy out for redemption.
You say that, but I did definitely put like a non-hog-tied up to a railroad. So yeah.
Oh yeah, we all did that. You know, we all hog-tied people and left them for the fucking cougars, no doubt.
You actually could have spoken for it if you like put like a nun and hog-tie her onto the railroad. So.
The sick fuck trophy. Yeah. But that, and of course, once I started playing it as the story intended, it just kind of took over a very like cathartic, very meaningful sort of life of its own, where it was just fantastic. Also, that game, that story also shows you how fantastic an advancement Red Dead Redemption was, because until that point games were just things to be played, but this was the first game that really pushed the boundaries of like subtlety in its storytelling, and had the first game I can really think of that had a really adult theme, like a restrained theme. So my favorite point in Red Dead Redemption, which is a really unforgettable thing for me. Spoilers for Red Dead Redemption here, but let's face it is a very old game now. So at the end of the game, when you fight the bad guy, the main villain, I guess, it comes down to a simple duel by riverside, and it's not difficult at all. And the way that you just shoot the guy very realistically, and he just falls down in the river dead, and you just like, there's just no music, no overblown moments. He's just almost silent, and the guy just sticks his gun back in his revolver. Bang! Red Dead Redemption. I don't know why, but man, I cried so hard at the end of Red Dead Redemption. It really meant something quite valuable to me. So yeah, excellent game. I love it.
I loved, like, it was a very emotional game, and I love the way it uses music in this game. Like, there are a few moments where they have like licensed music that plays, where there's like, after the end of like a big mission or like an important mission, and you have to go right back to your camp or to your hideout, to the next place, and it has like a really nice, like, cool song playing, and it's like, you're just like riding through the wastelands, through like the deserts and stuff, and like that music plays in the background. It's like, it all comes together perfectly. Even though there's one time where I was like just in Mexico, right? And it's like, the music starts playing. I was riding, and I just dropped off my horse dead against like sort of like a hill or something, and then like, it just restarts, and the music didn't play anymore. It's like, that kind of sucks, but it was still awesome.
Brack, I had basically a scrambled version of that same story. I think it's the one where you're in the Owl Point area with the snow, and like the music started, the song came on, and I was like, oh yeah, nice. So I slowed my horse down and was just enjoying the atmosphere, and a fucking bear ran out and attacked me.
As it happens.
Yeah, I guess so. The dangers of the woods. Mm-hmm. When we're talking about Red Dead Redemption, I must add that Red Dead Redemption 2 would likely have made this list if Red Dead Redemption 1 hadn't been on it, simply because, on an episode, I don't want to talk about Red Dead twice. So and
you also don't want to talk about a game you haven't finished yet, right?
Well, I haven't quite finished it yet, but
You say that, but I know how long that game is, and I know you definitely are at least 20 to 30 hours away from the ending.
Oh man, but I don't mind that. Actually, I love it. For me, that game is a bit more like Skyrim than the original Red Dead, which is an excellent segue. Unless anybody's got anything more to say about Red Dead.
No. That's
No.
it.
All right. Well then, straight into you guessed it, Skyrim, from 2011. So yeah, I fucking love Skyrim. I think that Skyrim is, in my opinion, the greatest RPG ever made. I loved that fucking game. So I played Oblivion. I think on the PlayStation 3, I think I put more hours into Oblivion than any other single player game that I ever played. I put like something ridiculous like 500 hours into that, and I put 400 into Skyrim. And I still didn't finish the main quest. In Skyrim, you can play any way you want. There are so many options in, like dueling sword and shield, or axes, maces, archery, magic. So my personal thing in Skyrim was that I wanted to play completely differently from how I played in Oblivion, because I played Oblivion for so long as like a stealthy archer. I didn't want to go down that route. So this time I did something completely different, and I went for magic. And I mastered in conjuration and destruction magic was like my go-to thing in Skyrim. But just the way that you play Skyrim, you just sink into that world, and it's like you almost stop existing in your living room or whatever, and you just get pulled totally into that game world. You exist there. You are that character, and there are so many options, so many things you can do. It's just a world that you completely lose yourself. And the cities, the type of cities that you come across in Skyrim are still like nothing else you can come across in video games. You can go into any single room that you want. Any door that you see, you can pick and go into. There are giant castles with cities that feel thriving and alive, and the way you can just like talk to anybody at any time is just so wonderful.
It definitely feels like a real world. Like it definitely feels like you're transported to the world of Skyrim, not like you're in a video game. And like that's the way it makes it perfect. Like you're really immersed into that world, and it's not like some games, like most of the other games on my list and our lists are where you're actually playing like a definitive character. Like you're playing John Marston in the first Red Dead Redemption, right? And you're playing as John Marston, and you make decisions as him, and he's making like the way he would make those decisions. But in Skyrim, it's definitely just you in that world, right? You're actually like feel like you're yourself transported to like a giant fantasy world, and you're like, oh man, I want to do magic, and I'm gonna go join the magic school, and I'm gonna learn some cool magic. And there's like side quests, like, oh, there's a book I can read, and I can read a book, and I learn a little bit more about like what's happened in this town before like I arrived and stuff like that. And like it's really cool to like to just like do that, and it really feels like organic the way like mission starts. Like you just walk into a town and you just talk to a random guard, and the random guard is talking about, oh man, there's like a troll that like keeps attacking this town every night at 12 o'clock. And then like, oh, you go back at 12 o'clock at night, and there's like it's not a troll, it's a werewolf. And then, oh, you can kill the werewolf, but no, he's like, oh, the werewolf talks to you. It's like, oh, you can join the werewolf guild and stuff like that. It's like the story is like a really cool, and you really feel like you have actually a hand in telling that story instead of like the story is being told to you.
Yeah, it's so fantastic, and there are so many guilds there that it's basically endless. You got like the Dark Brotherhood and like the Thieves Guild. You got the Fighters Guild. You got the war between the Imperials and the Stormcloaks. You got like the Mages College. It just goes on and on and on, and there's just so much to do. And each one of those sort of side quests is basically the same length as the main quest. It's really incredible stuff. Takes you from
It's one of the reasons why I think most people, like me included, never finish the main quest. Like I replayed it later, and then I finished the main quest. Like, okay, it's weird that I've played Skyrim for so many hours and never finished the main quest, so I started it again and just went straight for the main quest. But otherwise, I would probably never have finished it.
Yeah, I never finished the main quest, and I absolutely adore that game. So there you go. Human Metal, are you ever going to play Skyrim?
I don't know. The thing you described with problems of playing through the main quest is the one I have with Rockstar games, which is why I rarely touch them. I just played only side quests in Vice City and in Grand Theft Auto 5, not much else either. So I don't know. I'm probably gonna just fucking fuck around, and if I played Skyrim one of these days. There's so many other games to play.
There's definitely a difference. There's a difference because, like in GTA, there's definitely a great difference between this is the main story. And side quests where it's like, you can have like maybe a little bit of dialogue and then you kill 50 people in like 10 minutes or something. Like, but in Skyrim, every side quest has like as much like importance to it as the main quest. So that's the difference. Like that's why people haven't played a lot of people don't play the main quest, because this Assassin's Guild is also as like threatening the world or some shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel like the side quests are less important than the main quest.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I first started playing Skyrim, like I thought, like, because Skyrim, you've not really played Skyrim, but it's very open and it doesn't force you to do anything. It just it gives you a couple of options. But like I had heard about the Mages Guild, like, you know, like the Harry Potter School for Wizards or whatever, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So I trekked off there, and then that was my focus. I did that, and basically that was like an entire game's worth of content right there in the Mages Guild, working your way up the ladder and becoming the headmaster of the school. Yeah, and also like I made my best friend Jizargot, who's like this cat person, and he came with me through the entirety of like 400 hours. And I had this thing because your followers are basically useless, and then Jizargot in giant, really difficult battles, he would I would survive, kill like hundreds of guys or whatever, survive by the skin of my teeth, and then I'd like, where's Jizargo? And I'd have to go and like pick through the dead to find him, and he'd be dead there on the battlefield. And then I'd be like, no, even though it's really difficult, I'd be like, no, I'm not having that. And I'd always have to reload it if Jizargo was dead. I just couldn't leave him behind.
Well, that's honorable. I mean, I was always scared of of games that are too open. But considering one of the games that will come up on my list later, maybe now I might be actually willing to try Skyrim out. But like I said, there are so many other games that I still have to play, so I don't know where on that Skyrim falls. I feel like that is a game for retirement for me. Like talking old ass fucking human metal with just jacked into the Matrix with a VR helmet and everything, then, there's this retro game called Skyrim. Let's play this. So, yeah, that's probably when I have enough time to play Skyrim.
And you're lucky, because they're probably going to make Skyrim for everything that's coming in the future. Like, you can have, like, VR hologram watch or whatever. And it's like, it has Skyrim on it. Oh.
It's going to be playable on everything, just like Doom, like the first Doom, so...
It's like the PlayStation 69 holodeck version of Skyrim. Yeah. So, but however, Skyrim wasn't the only absolutely fantastic open world game to come out in 2011. So, Brack, why don't you tell us about the next entry on our list?
Yeah, the next entry is Arkham City, which is like definitely it shows what my interest is more in very open world games, but it has like a real focus on story and a focus on like a main character. And in this case, that obviously is Batman. And the reason I like Arkham City so much is like it mixes together two gameplay styles that I really love, which is like really like arcadey button mashing combat and like really gadget heavy stealth. And those are two gameplay parts are really mixed together well in just one game, because Batman obviously doesn't use guns. So people that have guns are actually like a big threat to him. But people that don't have guns, like he's the best martial artist in the world, so he can actually kick some ass then. So it really gives you both segments of Batman, but also telling a really cool story like in that world, made by like some of the best like Batman writers, and using the voice actors that have like played those characters for like their entire lives, like from the beginning of Batman the Animated Series. So it feels like also it's part of that world, but like a grown-up version. And it itches to edgy too. Like it's not too edgy. Like Arkham Knight gets a little bit too edgy at times. Like Batman is like a huge dick in that. It goes a little bit over the top. This is like just close enough to it that I like. Oh, I feel like it's an adult game, but it's not like it betrays like the character. And great performances, amazing open world city. Like it really is like one of those sequels that like goes like way bigger and like in a way different direction, where the first one is very much like a BioShock type, original BioShock, not Infinite type game, like where it's like one smaller location, the most inside, and you have like
it's a Metroidvania
type
it's
elements
a
in
hub
it.
type game. Yeah.
And this one is definitely more like a big open world, go wherever you want to go from the beginning type city. But you still get new gadgets, you still go new enemies, you still have amazing boss fights. You also have amazing side quests where like the side quests also have like cool Batman lore in it. Like there's Batman enemies like Bane is not part of the main story, but it's like it has side quests too. Like there's like they really use like they use the whole buffalo when it comes to like the Batman universe, and it's what I loved about it the most.
Yeah. It's fantastic. Oh god, Arkham City. I also already liked Arkham Asylum very much, but that still had some things in it that I wasn't too fond of. Like the boss fights in that game suck ass because it's mostly like 3 of the same. I really
I like one boss fight in it a lot actually. There's like the one boss fight with Killer Croc, which is fun. But
that's not really. That's not really a boss fight.
Yes, it is. It's a boss fight. In fact, actually, to be honest, the first thing I think of when I think of Arkham Asylum is that boss fight with Killer Croc.
Just run away from him. I don't remember that.
No, yeah, you just run away. But like a lot of it is running away. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. But you know what I'm talking about. It's those fucking giant Hercules type enemy types where you have to have them run into walls and then just fucking punch them from behind or whatever.
I mean, you're right.
That happens 3 times.
The biggest problem in that game is full Joker at the end, where like Joker just goes like the Hawk. Yeah. That's the biggest problem that game has.
It's so not his character, and it's like, okay, you just wanted to use that enemy type again and just throw some minions in there on the way. And that sucked. The rest of the game is good. But Arkham City doesn't have any of that shit. It's just like awesome from beginning to end. Everything in that game works, in my opinion. It's like if you asked me in 2017 or even at the beginning of 2018, what's the definitive superhero game, that would have been Arkham City. No fucking contest. That might have changed, but we'll get to that. But yeah, it's just fantastic. It's probably after Batman the Animated Series, my favorite version of Batman. Of course, that's not fair because it's Kevin Conroy again voicing that character, but it's just great. I think character-wise and what they did story-wise, they also did some interesting stuff after this in Arkham Knight, but Arkham Knight had a bunch of gameplay problems, especially the stupid Batmobile stuff.
And that's one problem out here. It's like,
yeah, but
that's like about 80% too much Batmobile. That's the main problem.
And some parts of Batmobile are all right, but the fucking tank is it's so repetitive and dumb. And it's like, okay, I didn't like that. But none of that happens in Arkham City. It's like I'm saying, Arkham City is like the perfect middle thing. It's not too big. It's not too small. It expands on everything that Arkham Asylum did right in just the right way. Just like makes everything even better that was already good in that game, and cuts out all the bullshit. Puts in some amazing boss fights, especially the final one that you didn't see coming was like just a giant bonus, especially for people who watch the animated series. Like, oh, I really would like to see that character and fight him one time. And it's just the ending of that game is so fucking perfect and works so great with the dynamic between those two characters. Again, I like what they did with Joker and Batman in Arkham Knight as well, because I'm a sucker for that kind of shit. With all the psychology behind it and everything, but I really liked how they wrapped all that stuff up right in the world of the living in Arkham City. And yeah, that world is fantastic. I never got into Arkham Origins that much, although I think that might have the best boss fights actually. Like the first one against Deathstroke is really cool. But my
favorite boss fight is actually in Arkham City, which is the one against against Dr. Freeze, which is in my opinion
That's great. Yeah,
that's the best
yes,
side of the game because it uses like the stealth mechanics a lot.
Yeah, that's pretty great. That's true.
Although it's really easy, I love the one against the Penguin in Arkham City.
Yeah, it's also cool. Yeah. Arkham City has a bunch of cool boss fights. It's like, yeah, finally, fucking, and none of them are the same. I think they are all very different, like the fight against Ra's al Ghul, the fight against the final boss fight, spoilers, against Clayface. Everything has a special kick to it and a special mechanic to it. And yeah, it's super fun. I think all the fighting is simple, but it just works. And once you get into the fucking groove and kick ass like Batman, you feel really good. And yeah, it's a fucking great game. I can't wait, even if some of things in Arkham Knight didn't work for me. I just can't wait to see what Rocksteady does next. Because nobody knows. They haven't announced anything. There have been rumors, but we haven't heard anything. I assume they're going to do a PS4 launch title. It's got to be something like that at this point. Because it's been so long since Arkham Knight. That was at the beginning of this fucking console generation. Yeah, so also, what the fuck? What have they been doing?
Yeah. It's also kind of weird that they haven't made like another Batman game, or at least like Warner Brothers hasn't, even though because it's like one of the most popular like franchises. But Arkham City just was the best of that franchise. Like definitely. I love Arkham Knight as well. I also like Arkham Origins.
Yeah, me too.
Like Arkham City, just like just perfect. Like it fires at all cylinders at the same time.
Yes, it's the best Batman game out there, in my opinion.
I know what Rocksteady's been doing. Rocksteady has been playing with Bebop too much, but
fuck off. Appreciate it though.
But yeah, so I also Arkham City is an undeniable masterpiece. I love it. I think it's easily the best Batman game. I enjoyed Arkham Asylum. I also really enjoyed Arkham Origins. Actually, that was a really good game. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed that very much. I was not keen at all on Arkham Knight. I also think that game had really bad pacing issues, and the whole scene where they had that big cloud over the city towards the end of the game. Fuck that. I hated it.
I like the visual of that once that happens and you just fucking kneel on a fucking, I don't know, a pole or something on the top of a building and just look at the fucking city landscape just in scarecrow, engulfed in scarecrow gas. That looked super cool. Just a bunch of shit that, in terms of gameplay, that had to do with that was great. So
I actually liked the Scarecrow stuff a lot. Actually, like I really liked the performance by John Noble. I think
yes, that was great.
Scarecrow was great, and
he was great.
And while it was way over the top, I had a little bit of fun with like Batman just being like the biggest possible asshole that you can ever be. It's like, oh, they're really going for it. They're really like not trying around with like him being a dick in this one.
Well, I enjoyed all the story stuff with Arkham Knight, I have to say. That wasn't his weak point. Its weak point was his gameplay and its pacing, I think, at certain points. But Arkham City, like you say, Arkham City is perfect. The one thing I will note about Arkham City is that, which I've noted before on the podcast, which is that game had the best ever, in any video game ever, they had the best ever game world because... that you play in a walled city, but the story of Bruce Wayne getting put into this sort of like experimental prison city thing, it completely explains all of the walls and end of the world so perfectly. And it's like it's properly like the game limitations are actually integrated into the story, and it just completely absorbs you. It completely convinces you that you're playing in a legitimate world. There's no wall break there. I absolutely adored that and thought it was so fantastic storytelling.
It's not like Arkham Origins where there's nobody outside because it's Christmas. That's like the element for it. It doesn't make any sense. But like in this one, like obviously you're in a prison city. Like not only is like it's a cool element, it feels like very much Escape from New York. Awesome concept in general, but it just like really fits with the game.
Exactly.
World.
That's exactly it. Everybody on the streets is a criminal. It's a fact. That's why they're there. And the walls that basically those big invisible walls. Why you don't go into Gotham City or whatever. A, there's no need to go into Gotham City. Batman is needed there, and B, the walls are there, because it's a fucking prison, and it's just amazing. It's really incredible stuff. And I also really love the way that the open world is open world stuff, which is it was really solid and good. But then when you get into the dungeons, They are dungeons. They're straight up like Zelda-y type puzzly dungeons where you use your gadgets and stuff. I fucking loved that. Like, if the first game was like a Metroid style game, like a Metroid Prime style game, then the second one is Zelda, basically. It was, I just loved it. It was perfect. Nothing else to say, really. It was a real journey. And speaking of that,
oh man, that's just like the most blatant. Like, oh my god, here it comes.
That's what my girlfriend says. Yes, of course.
Journey? That's what she's saying? He's saying this was a real journey. Like, oh, no.
Oh yeah,
it's a real ordeal.
That's kind of a weird thing to say.
Yes, well, of course. My next game is from.
Yeah, this was a real Arkham City. Oh no, wait, wrong one.
And of course, my next game, of course, you probably already guessed, is Leisure Suit Larry. Now, no, I'm joking. It's Journey. So Journey is an absolutely fantastic game. Journey really kicked off the march of the mini game. No, that's the wrong terminology.
Indie game.
Yeah, the indie game, the march of the very short, plain one sitting indie game. Yeah, art house game. You know, like fucking What Remains of Edith Finch and Firewatch. Probably no Journey would probably have delayed their eventual release. I think it really kind of popularized that genre of game. Journey was a fantastic tool of storytelling, I think, where there was no dialogue in the game. It was all about visual storytelling and about subtlety and about metaphors and about what you made of it. I think everybody's got their own sort of take on what Journey is actually about, which is brilliant. It's a really thought-provoking game. It's a game that, you know, when you finish it, you really contemplate its ideas and its philosophy and what it's trying to say to you. Me personally, I always thought that it was about, you know, suffering through the trials of life, and if you can meet somebody, it makes like the difficult parts of your life easier to cope with. But then maybe if you do your best and fight as hard as you can, and you know, prove that you're a good person or whatever, then you know you get to go to heaven basically at the end of your life with the person you love as well, with the person you're with. So that was my take on it. There were points in Journey. So spoiler alert for Journey if I haven't already spoiled it. But the moment where you actually transcend into heaven. That moment was an intense emotional rush for me, and I don't think I've ever cried that hard in a video game ever. I think Red Dead Redemption beat it by, you know, being the first one to really set me off, but Journey just I don't know, it's like watching Manchester by the Sea or something. It's really it's really deeply affecting. I don't think I've ever cried that much in any video game before or since. And just the gameplay of it is very simple, but it's just perfectly made. The visual style of it is really striking. It's gorgeous to look at. Like every single frame of that game is like a painting come to life. It's just
it's a lot like a painting. Like what's the painter? The Chirico, I think the painter is. He also made like the cover of like Ico, which is pretty iconic. Like the PS2 cover is based on one of his paintings, but like it definitely feels like one of those like empty, like forgotten worlds almost that you're just walking through, like just exploring. So yeah, it really feels like a painting in that way.
It feels like, I also feel it's got a very Ghibli-esque sort of vibe to it, that game. It feels like a Ghibli-esque animation that you can play. And of course, we have to talk about the music. Jesus Christ, that score is probably still the best video game score ever put to tape. It's fantastic.
Austin Wintry, man.
Yeah, it's a great score. Like it's definitely, I almost feel bad for him because it's like, one of your first like known works. It might be also the work you're going to be remembered for all time, because it's just like one of the best pieces of all time. So yeah, I actually didn't get it like a Grammy nomination, some stuff like for the first video game.
Might be
nominations.
It did get a get nominated for Grammy. I don't know if it won or whatever, but yeah, it's absolutely perfect game. And any of you guys, I'll pass it over to you. Any thoughts about Journey?
I just love the game in general, and I think like Journey is like one of those examples of what like the uh, the trend of like having digital games, like having like every console having like an internet connection and like people being able to buy games digitally. Like without that, Journey wouldn't exist. Like nobody would buy a game like that if it's like on a disc or something, like a full box release. But like because of the digital revolution almost in gaming, the games like this could get made, and like it's one of the first ones, but it was definitely not one of the last ones. A lot of games were inspired by it, or like in other ways like influenced by it, or the way it was like talked about and the way it was released. It definitely changed the way people talk about games for a little while as well. So yeah, really cool game and just a fun game in general.
Yeah, definitely. Very like a lot of emotionally resonant scenes in that game. Like the whole game is actually, and just the experience, interesting multiplayer component. Just meeting people there that you can't really talk to, but that you can like share part of your adventure with. Just like, you know, meeting people in life that maybe you spend some time with, and then they leave your circle of acquaintances again. You know, stuff like that. Just feels like a very true to life game. Just there's some parallels and some connections there, also in the visual language and as well. And I really like that. And I think that game in general is just I don't know if transcendent experience is too cloudy, too flowery in terms of expression, but if you play it under the right circumstances, like maybe Chuchu did, and if you like let yourself be consumed by that game on an emotional level, I think it's a very unique and very rewarding experience. And considering that this is an indie thing, and that is it's now no surprise that this probably was the reason for a bunch of people to get into the indie scene and get into programming games, because they were like, hey, if a small percentage of people, or a small number of people can make such an incredible experience, I want to try and make that too. And I think that is probably the most impressive thing about that, like inspiring people with something so simple and something so well crafted by so few people to create their own art and create their own emotionally resonant experiences is probably the best thing a Journey could do. So yeah, thanks for that, Journey.
This is a cool bridge actually to the next game. Not sure you wanted to say something else.
Oh yes. Oh, I'm really, really sorry. Oh man. But I just thought we can't talk about Journey without me telling my legendary Journey story one last time, even though I've told it like a million times before. Everybody knows what it is, but the the way that you connect with people in Journey and you go through the entire game with them or something, and you like craft connections with the people, but it doesn't tell you like who they are. It doesn't let you have voice contact with them. But at the end, finally, after you finish the game, it reveals, who they are, so you can like friend them or whatever. And I had this masterful like journey, this wonderful play session where we went through the entire game together, and he would always come back and help me if I was injured or whatever, or if my cape got frozen. And we had this wonderful, perfect playthrough of Journey, and I really felt connected to the person and thought, right, I'm gonna send this guy a friend message. And then finally, his name arrived, and his name was Nigga Nigga Nigga.
Oh, that's so bad.
Hey, listen, if he is a black person, that would be all right, wouldn't it? So
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
The way he says it's like it's hard R, so I'm not sure.
But yeah, that's a hot take
pretty
for
bad.
me.
It's pretty bad. Like I've seen that like there's like this comic about Journey as well, where it's like this one person, like the first few screens of like Journey the game, and it's like I like the person like talking like, I don't know who you are, but I really feel we really made a special connection. And the other guy, and at the other end, it's like some skinhead with like Nazi tattoos on him and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's kind of funny.
Well, Brack, that is certainly a hot take. So what's next on your list?
And I found it funny about Human Metal talking about like the indie scene and like, oh, this might inspire people to like make their own game and whatever. This is a game. The first it's a game that's literally the first one I've played. That was literally completely made in Game Maker, which is like one of those really small like software where you can easily make your own game. And I'm talking about Hotline Miami, which like I remember that like it used to be like a really hard thing to port into other systems because it was originally made in fucking Game Maker, which is not a made like a way actual like proper engine almost. But yeah, Hotline Miami, it's a game that I have played on 3 different systems. I played from beginning to end on both my PC, my PS Vita, and my PS4. And I think I might have tried on the PS3 as well. I'm not sure if that was actually came out on it, but I've played it so many times. And I think it's hard to talk about what I really loved about the game. Like there's one part of it is that it's just like the super intense, pounding music, extremely intense, like short like bursts of like really difficult gameplay. Like it's not like a game like Dark Souls where it's like it's difficult for like the entire game. If you die, you have to start over like from a spawn type of game, like really paced. It's really like, okay, you died and you try again, and it's like 5 seconds and you died again, but you want to try again. And like the moments, like if you play through a level, it could be at the longest like a minute long or something, but it's like super short, intense burst of like ultra violence, super like extreme like sound design, and it's super yeah, it's really interesting to play through that. And it's also fun because like it's a really violent game, but it's also one of the games that that was really a big trend in 2012 for like games that like questions gamers on why they like violent video games. Like that same year also came out like Spec Ops: The Line, which is also a game where it like kind of questions why you're enjoying like the violence in this a lot. And Hotline Miami did the same thing, especially with like the ending, where it's like, why are you just mindlessly like like following the instructions like of this game, even though it's so violent? So I found that interesting as well. And last, what I want to say about it, that it's like Hotline Miami also started sort of like the Devolver Digital brand, which is like this kind of like punk rock indie video game brand that's been such a big deal over the last couple of years. Like the last 5 years, they've become such a big deal in indie gaming, and they've really grown with like the indie gaming industry. And Hotline Miami was like at the start of that as well. And I'm not sure, have you guys, any of you guys played Hotline Miami?
No, none of them. Neither the first nor the second one. Sorry.
I would avoid the second one. The second one was okay. Like the difference is like the second one was just like a normal game, and the first one was like almost a transcendent experience for me because I was so into it. I was like listening to the soundtrack all the time, and I was just like so into that like gameplay style that I've played through like at least 5 or 10 like Hotline Miami clones that came out in the years afterwards. Like, but none of them actually grabbed me the way the first one, like the original Hotline Miami, did.
That's cool, man. Yeah.
I also really like the soundtrack of Hotline Miami. I haven't played the game, but I listened to the soundtrack a lot, and I think it kind of ventures. It's got some of the same artists that are on the Fury soundtrack as well. And yeah, it's just this really cool style of music in general. And for that game, apparently it worked perfectly, which is great. So
I think, I'm not sure, I'm not entirely sure, but I think some of the people who did like the score on Hotline Miami also ended up doing like the intro score for Stranger Things.
That makes sense.
Oh.
So yeah, it's the same type of music, but it's like super intense. Like I really love the way like have your headset on and like super have the music really loud and have like the music like being almost like a heartbeat throughout like playing one of those levels. And I really like and almost I went really into it. Like after a while, I got like in the Zen mode, like the Zen mode where like just playing through like almost not thinking about anything outside that's happening except for like what's happening on my screen there.
Yeah, Axiom Verge had the same thing with its soundtrack, that kind of like woomba 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 thing going on, where it just like Brack was saying, it was almost like a heartbeat, like it really pulled you in. You just like you find yourself like you're not really realize you're doing it, but you're kind of like rocking out and pulsing yourself, pulsing your body to the beat. Like yeah. Anyway, changing gears, Human Metal. What's next on your list?
Next on my list. So
like Shooter's girlfriend always says, it was really a revengeance, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, Chuchu needs to elaborate on that, or maybe shouldn't. But yeah, we had had Journey and Hotline Miami in 2012. So we're gonna go to 2013 now, and I'm gonna talk about the definitive Platinum style spectacle action game. In my opinion, some people would probably argue it's one of the Bayonettas, but not for me, guys. Because this fucking face-melting action blockbuster, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, is, in my opinion, the best game they ever did have done so far. And yeah, that was a spin-off from, the classic Metal Gear Solid series, or Metal Gear series, headed by Hideo Kojima. And he was initially working on that game too. But he wanted to do something with it, but couldn't quite figure out how to work. So at a certain point, he was either can the thing or give it over to someone else, and apparently Platinum was told them, okay, we can make this work. So Konami gave it over to Platinum, and boy did they make it work. So the main character is Raiden from Metal Gear Solid 2, and this is basically, at this point, I think still the last game set in the Metal Gear Solid timeline. It's still where everything, the farthest in the future, and everyone is a fucking cyborg, and everyone is fucking killing each other, private military organizations.
Nanomachine, son. Oh.
Yeah, it's nanomachine, son, to the fucking max. Like, everyone has fucking superpowers, like crazy. One of Raiden's enemies can just fucking tear his complete body apart, like all his body parts are flying through the air and attacking him. It's crazy bullshit everywhere. Everyone has crazy ass weapons, crazy ass swords. One of them looks like a fucking giant scissor. It's crazy bullshit. And I love it. And this game embodies, to me, the most what it means to have over-the-top, dumb, but super enjoyable action. Like, from the beginning, you start off as Raiden, like, slice and dice a bunch of cyborg soldiers, and then you fight this giant Metal Gear. You're this small person.
First level.
In the first level, you fight this giant-ass robot and fucking cut it to pieces to one of the most amazing soundtracks in video game history. It's fucking... by Jamie Christopher. It's fucking great. It's fantastic. Like, the soundtrack is especially one of those things that always just stuck out to me with the games. I mean, we mentioned before, like, the great soundtrack of Hotline Miami, but in Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, it has this great style of being instrumental for most of the game, but when you actually get to the point where you are able to finish an enemy off, like, there's a slight sliver of health left on the enemy, and you can, like, initiate the final attack, fucking lyrics burst out to the song, and it becomes a super great, cheesy, final fucking finish him Mortal Kombat moment, and you fucking cut the enemy to pieces. Like, you can go into over-the-shoulder perspective and can move your sword around. That's the gimmick of the game. You can cut everything, and you can just hack him or her to giant slices of metal or flesh. And yeah, it's great. Just the whole game feels really good, in my opinion, still. On the toughest difficulty, it's a bitch, especially that first level, because you don't have all your upgrades yet. That it's not that fun, but on normal difficulty and hard, it's good. And you got a bunch of moves in your arsenal, and special weapons that you can use, even the trusted rocket launcher at certain points. There's a bunch of shit in there, but mostly it's sword fights, and you can target specific enemy areas. You can, like I said, go into the over-the-shoulder view, and you often have to slice certain body parts on the enemy because they're only vulnerable there. So there's strategy involved in certain fights, and all of that is just flying at you at a breakneck pace. Like, the game doesn't slow down. It just is it gets faster and faster. Right?
It starts at 11, but it's like, I'm gonna go up a notch, like every
25.
level.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
And it ends, I'm not sure if you want to say it, but it ends with one of the most amazing boss fights.
Yes,
with,
in video game history.
Oh, it's amazing.
Top 3, probably. Like, you fight literally some fucking hulked up rugby football version of Donald Trump. Basically,
it was so funny, because especially this game came out before he ran for president, right? I'm not sure.
Yes, yeah,
but
it had
came out
2013.
The guy, the main villain, uses his slogan,
Yes,
Make
it
America
says
great again.
to make America great again. And when I recently played that game last year, I was like, what the fuck?
They actually stole it from Ronald Reagan. They're like, he's also
Yeah,
like,
I guess. Yeah,
but,
it makes sense.
still,
Yeah,
it's really funny. But it's also funny. It's like this super cyborg game, right? Like everybody's amazing cyborgs. Like there's like nothing of their body is like still there. Like maybe like their eyes or their face or whatever, but everything else is cyborg. And it's like robotic. And you're fighting like a dude, like a middle-aged guy, balding guy in a suit. like kind of puffy looking, and then like that's the final boss fight, and then he turns into like
and he kicks ass. Like that's a tough boss fight.
Yes, it's
holy shit!
Because nano machines, and he's like he's thinking like he's this dumb slogans where it's like I could beat the president, or like
he talks to you through the entire fight. It's crazy. It lectures you on the fucking way of the world and why he needs to do what he needs to do, while fucking grounding Raiden into a ball and kicking him to the fucking screen. That game is so goofy and so self-aware, and I love it for it. It's like, it knows exactly what it's doing. It knows that it's fucking dumb bullshit, but it's also, talking about some, maybe now even more relevant topics than back then. And it has a lot of fun with doing that. But, it's... this game, man. I assume a lot of people haven't even heard of it, because, it came out on 360 and PS3, and it is on Steam, but we never got a remaster of that, and Konami is down in the fucking dumpster right now, so we probably won't get that anytime soon. But goddamn, this is one of my favorite Metal Gear games. Like, I probably can, you can. It's not a normal one. It's not one of the classic ones, but after probably the first one, this is my favorite Metal Gear game. And my favorite Platinum game, like hands down. Like I said, I played Bayonetta 1, 2, Wonderful 101. I love all those games. I love Platinum. But Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is untouchable because it does everything
it's just
right.
a shame that they never used the mechanic again, because I loved it as well. Like the gimmick, especially like when Kojima was still making it, was like you can cut through everything. Like your sword is like a cybernetic super sword, and literally like everything you can cut like straight through. And like if you see like a watermelon, like you can cut like the top of the watermelon, where you can like select each section, like you got full control over what you want to cut. And there are like moments where you have like a straight up like normal like goon enemy, right? Like a normal like straight up the middle enemy, and then you like beat him up a little bit, and then you go in like the cutting mode, and you just like cut him in so many like 50 different slices. Like you cut it like in like little onion slices. Like it's insane. It's like
And if you want to get special items and stuff like that in your achievements and shit, you have to slice up enemies in a certain way. But it never feels like too cumbersome or too forced. It always feels like fun, and it's very satisfying, especially if you fight a really shitty boss and you get to fucking slice him into tiny bread pieces. It's great stuff. So,
where's the cooking mama spin-off?
Yeah, exactly. Raiden as a battle chef. Yeah, I would love to play that. And I would have loved a sequel to that game. I mean, it's great that we got something like that anyway, but I would love a sequel to Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, which we will never get, but I feel like that mechanic, like you said, could have lasted us at least another game, and that story was so fucking bonkers. I would have liked to see what they do more with that universe. Yeah, man. This is one of my favorite action games of all time, and I can't wait for Bayonetta 3, but I don't think it will be able to touch Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance for me. That game was made for me, like from beginning to end. Just everything in that game appeals to me personally. I feel.
So you're saying you love it to the infinite?
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Yes. That's my cue. Prepare for a shock. Let's do a nice callback. Seems it's episode 69 to the Axe Head Assembly here. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I really, really, really like BioShock Infinite.
Really?
What?
Yeah, I do.
No way.
So yes, 2013. Perhaps a good year for gaming. Also spawned BioShock Infinite. So yes, again, I feel like I need to say the same thing again. I really, really like BioShock Infinite. It's an absolutely fantastic game. It is without question, my favorite story-based first-person shooter of all time. No question about that. Not your Half-Lives or whatever. It's BioShock Infinite for me.
It's for me definitely my favorite story-based first-person shooter set in a flying city of all time.
Yeah, set in a racist Disneyland. Yeah, for sure.
So in Disneyland,
just Disneyland. Yes,
yeah, basically. But the thing is about BioShock Infinite, is that I had played BioShock when it was released, the original, the Under the Sea one, and it was just it was okay. I mean, I liked it. It was fine. But I really didn't understand the praise that was heaped upon it, because everybody was just saying, "Man, this is like one of the best first-person shooters of all time," whatever. And for me, it was just, it was all right. It was good. I mean, it wasn't bad at all. It was just nice. It was a nice game that I played. I think it lagged in the middle, if memory serves, and I got a bit tired of it. But I kind of managed to get through it and finish it. And yeah, it was a really good game with a really good atmosphere. So I wasn't really expecting that much from BioShock Infinite, and it just fucking blew me away. That game blew me away. Obviously, its game world up in the sky, the game world of Columbia, is one of the best that's ever been created. It's so colorful and unique. I don't know.
I'm not sure if it's that colorful. I mostly saw a lot of white ropes there, but it wasn't that colorful. Mostly just white.
Well, I don't know. It feels like it's got an almost kind of cell shaded anime-ish type of graphical style to it. It's like big and chunky. I thought it was very, very colorful, for sure. I think it's got a really, really great story. I loved that stuff. I enjoyed all the twists and turns, and there were points in it that got me, like it hooked me pretty emotionally. It's got a lot of really. It's got a fantastic soundtrack, and some of the way that game cheekily uses some like classical music in its score at just the right moments. It's just
one of the moments I remember is like in the beginning somewhere. It's like they use this cover of like the Beach Boys, I think, but it's like a cappella. And I was like, like, and they have like a story reason for it as well, which is fun to find out later on. But like they use a lot of like modern songs and like other older like ways of telling it, of like playing it.
Yeah. So Brack and I have just been distracted by Human Metal's dog, who has just appeared on camera. Hello, Human Metal's dog.
Yes.
But yeah, the soundtrack kicks ass. I really love Elizabeth, the character, as well, and the relationship between Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth as you go through the game. Songbird is just an amazing creation, and Father Comstock is a kind of spooky, kind of really creepy bad guy. You don't like Songbird there, Brack?
Not really. That's one of the problems. Like I feel like Songbird would have been more fun if it was actually a boss fight instead of just like a sort of half-ass set piece.
Oh man, I don't think those. That's the thing. I don't think it was half-assed at all. I think that thing was fucking terrifying. I think it was an awesome villain. So, but the other thing that made BioShock Infinite so fantastic was the combat in the game. So there was so much variety. Of course, you had your usual guns and whatever, your pistols and your shotguns and your sniper rifles, and then you had the vigors. So there were all sorts of different power-ups that you could use. A couple of my favorites were like throwing crows at people. I always thought that was just awesome and badass. And the water one where you can use like a water whip to pull snipers out of their position. I always thought that was awesome as well. But there's so much variety in the combinations you can use. But also, you had Elizabeth's ability to pull things out from alternative universes. So when you get onto a battlefield, you got your vigors, whichever combination you want to use. You got your guns. You got, the things you can pull out. You can pull out extra cover or turret robots or whatever. And then, of course, usually in the big battle set pieces, you have the sky rails, the roller coaster things. You can just jump up and, use those kind of roller coaster rails to go up to different points of verticality. So it was almost like limitless, the amount of options you had on a battlefield in that game. And I just thought it was a really exciting, excellent combat game with a brilliant story, excellent graphics, a really good, strong emotional connection. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite games of all time. However, it was a divisive game. I will say that. A lot of people.
Talk. Mentioning
Yeah,
that, like I like it a lot less than you personally. I still think it's a pretty good game. I know it's divisive. Like I also like the first Bioshock a lot more, but I think the emotional segment of the story is better in Bioshock Infinite. But I feel like Bioshock Infinite, like in its like deeper metaphors and stuff, is a little bit flatter. And and I feel like you talking about the gameplay. I feel like at times one of my problems was that the gameplay felt like it got in the way of the story, and it felt like sometimes I had like moments was like, oh fuck, I need to get through some like more enemies to get to the next story segments, and it's like it just didn't really work for me. Overall, I enjoyed it, and I had one of the problems I had, like you can't talk about all these options, but what they annoyed me a lot, that you can only have like 2 guns with you at one time. It's like, do we really have to do that shit? Like I have pants that like burn people when somebody hits me. It's not realistic, and I only have 2 guns with me.
I guess that's a common complaint, but I liked that. I liked having to think about how to juggle your options. I like that in like that kind of like resource management aspect to it, where you had to sort of really kind of think about which guns to take into which type of situation.
But you can't have like you didn't have the decision. That's the problem. Like you can't like think ahead like, oh, in like 20 minutes I will need like a sniper, so I have to keep a sniper with me. But like, oh, you only realize you might have needed that sniper when it's already too late.
But I enjoyed that, having to think on the fly. If you don't have the right correct weapons or whatever, you have to sort of deal with that type of situation and find another way around it. So I actually enjoyed that aspect to it. Whereas I can understand how that would wind people up. I think that is a common complaint of the game. It just didn't bother me at all.
So like, yeah, I think for you, it worked completely different. For me, it was like, instead of like giving you like different options or like making use to like giving you like different like scenarios, diversifying the way you can play, it's almost like forced you to like, okay, I will find out what will work best, and I will use that for most of the game. And that's what happened to a lot of people, and for me as well.
Yeah, that's well, that kind of sucks for people who didn't enjoy it, because I really, really, absolutely loved that game. Did you play Bioshock Infinite Human Metal?
Yes, and I loved it. So I played all of the Bioshocks. I liked the first one a lot, the second one not so much. I think that was the weakest one out of them. And a lot of people like the multiplayer in that, but
the second one is bad, but it has one good like story DLC. So that on its own is pretty alright.
I didn't play those. But yeah, I just like the setup of Bioshock Infinite. I thought the story between Elizabeth and Booker and how their relationship developed and everything, and the funky, funny, or not funny really, but entertaining sci-fi twists were pretty cool and well executed. I thought that was just not a sci-fi story you haven't seen before, because alternate universes are a stock trade in that genre, but I thought it was executed pretty interestingly, and especially how it circles back to the first game and how it wraps all that stuff up, and how it puts all that stuff together in the end was very, very cool in my opinion. I just really liked that. Some people didn't, apparently. I thought it was pretty great. I thought it was a neat idea, and I was very satisfied with how that game wrapped up, and was engaged with it emotionally for a lot of times. So yeah, I had a lot of fun. Gameplay wise, I feel like some parts felt a bit too tubey, I guess, like too straightforward, where the first one felt a bit more open in certain areas. Like Bioshock Infinite always felt like you had a pretty clear go where you wanted to go. Yeah, you had some rooms where you had maybe, I'm gonna maybe take the left path, but that would always circle around in the same room, kinda. So that was a bit more constricted, I felt like, but I didn't mind that really, because like you said, the gameplay was really fun. I was however, one of the people who just stuck with one vigor and one weapon pretty much, because I just found that combination that was so fucking overpowered. I was like, okay, I'm gonna use that now. But I didn't get bored of it. Like, I used Murder of Crows, the one thing you say where you throw, and that thing makes people weaker to weapon damage, and I used that and the shotgun. And that, until the final battle, which was fucking trash in my opinion. But Bioshock always had a problem with the final boss fights. That was fucking. That let me just breeze through the game because the enemies had no fucking chance against that combination. But yeah, it was super fun. And I also liked Songbird. Of course, I would have liked to actually fight him too, but how would that have turned out considering Bioshock's track record with boss battles? So maybe it was better we didn't get that, and I thought the story behind Songbird was pretty cool, and the story behind Comstock, and like I said, Elizabeth the Booker, everything was super interesting. And yeah, I really like Bioshock Infinite. I think great setting, like you said, visually too, like interesting, unique, and I think we have. Did we see games that try to copy that exact style, like the southern style of Columbia or whatever that city was called? Did we get another game of maybe one of the Assassin's Creed didn't
not really
that was set in that time period either.
I don't think so.
Maybe
it's weird.
Maybe you're thinking of Far Cry 5. I'm not sure, but
Dishonored maybe.
Dishonored, obviously. Dishonored, by the way, is an honorable mention.
Yeah,
we love Dishonored too. That like would have been that would have been an honorable mention on my list. But yeah, like I said, like I'm sounding more negative than I actually am because I still love this game and I played it through. Like it was like at least in my top 3 of that year, and that's a goddamn year. Let me tell you. And
speaking of which,
I played all the DLC as well. I really enjoyed the DLC. But
I enjoyed the DLC. But before you go into before you go say, I'm just going to defend one thing that came up in my mind. We're talking about Songbird, right? And how you wanted to play Songbird as a boss. But if you had played Songbird as a boss, then inevitably shot out the sky or something, you would have missed one of the best moments of the game, which is Songbird's death. Which is one of the more emotional moments in the game, which was fucking awesome.
I have multiple boss fights against Dr. Freeze Batman, but it like doesn't kill him. So you can have a boss fight without having to kill a character.
Oh yeah, I suppose so.
Right, but like I said, I enjoyed the game. I think the boss fights in Bioshock 1 was really bad, right? It's like almost Arkham Asylum and boss fight bad, but it had like the big daddies. So those were really cool. Cool bosses.
You had the handyman though in Bioshock.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that, to be honest. That really
me too. It's like no.
But let's talk about one thing. Like 2013, it was a year of great games, but it also was the year of Troy, the Troy Boy Baker, because the next game, it's one of those like years was like one actor. It's this in games, by the way, you don't really talk about video game actors all that much. Like they talk about like, this is a good force performance. Nolan North obviously was like iconic and like they really used it. But that year, like one guy came to the scene and a lot, and it's like, oh, Troy Baker. We have to listen to Troy Baker now. Who's this Troy Baker guy? Like he was huge for that 1 year. And actually afterwards he's still big, but
I was about to say he's still like one of the most
but that's like the year where it's like it came for him. Like, you know what I mean? That's the year like everybody in gaming all of a sudden recognized, oh, that guy's an amazing actor. And it was like him and Nolan North all the time, wasn't it? It's like Nolan North and Troy Baker. That's all the names that you ever used to hear, like constantly. Yeah, but that started after that year. Like, and it's funny enough, like they started, they had like they were both in Uncharted 4. They actually have like a YouTube channel now where they both like do like playthroughs of games, like the two of them, Troy Baker and Nolan North, which is kind of funny. But like let's talk about the next game of this year with Troy Baker in the lead, and it's like one of probably his best performance, his most iconic performance, I would say at least, and it's The Last of Us, and The Last of Us was definitely a special game for me. Like it's one like. But in between, like in the first 30 minutes, like I'm like having bloodshot eyes, like red eyes with tears coming out of them. Like it's like I was really emotional during that game, and it wasn't even the most emotional moment. Like I really feel like one of the things that was so special about it, like they took the more cheap emotional route early on, but then had like the deeper emotional segments, like the more like, oh, this is like really human behavior and frustrating human behavior, and like what would I do in that situation, emotional moments later on the game, even though you might think they would lead to having the same type of moments. But The Last of Us, obviously a game by Naughty Dog, It's about two characters like going like surviving in the end of the world, like in a journey as well from one place to another, and an emotional journey as well. And Troy Baker plays the main character, and he plays it wonderfully. Like, you never, like, people nowadays say, "Oh, Troy Baker!" Like, I recognize his voice. I get annoyed by his voice, but that moment you didn't hear his voice at all. You heard like that character, and it's like it felt so much like a real person, and a real person that you grew with, that you like spent so much time with. Like, and I like the way this game felt like a long book. Like, you're stuck with it through multiple seasons. You grow with these characters. You see these characters grow to each other, and you feel like you have a part in that by having some segments where you can like decide what's being said, or like point to stuff in the game world where like the characters will talk about that, and you feel like you help these two characters like in their journey through this slice of life almost. And I've talked a lot about The Last of Us right now. You guys have obviously played it, so let head on it. Human Metal.
Okay. I recently replayed Last of Us as the remastered version on PS4, and just like Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, that game holds up super well, and is still one of my favorite games of all time. The emotional aspects you mentioned are obviously the most important thing. I think the gameplay is tied too. Some people have a problem with the some of the encounters happening in kind of sameish arenas where you like sneak around, and you see a specific layout in the street or something like that, and okay, now a fight is gonna happen. I see cover there.
Yeah, I get that. Like, it's the rest of the world is definitely designed like a real world, right?
Yeah.
And then you have these moments where it's like, okay, I can see this is designed like a gameplay, like arena, even though it's still set in that real world, but it's definitely like, obviously, okay, this is where this guy is going to stand with the sniper. Okay, I have to sneak from this side to this side. Oh, here's like the cover that I can use. But yeah, it's still, I did have a problem with it, but I can understand other people having it.
Yeah, me too. But I didn't have a problem like you. I didn't have a problem with it either. It never pulled me out of the emotional engagement with the game, like the constant feel of dread, maybe like this constantly hovering atmosphere of despair, and was kind of part of that game, and always when you feel like, oh, things are looking up, shit gets bad again. And it's not like it's super tiring, like in The Walking Dead, for example, but it's like it's there, and that's part of the game. But I think it's executed in a very, very good way, in my opinion. And I think the storytelling is great, and I think especially when it comes to the connection between the main characters, like it's just the story of those two people. And they might not always be together, but how they develop, especially when it comes to them acting with each other, not only like having their separate character development, but when it comes to how they behave, how they interact with each other, that's the strongest part, and how they form like this, like slowly, very slowly form this strong bond that gets tested many times in many different ways.
Yeah, it's a recognizable concept, right? About two characters that like are forced to like stay together, right? Like there's like situations that happen where these two characters, they have to work together, and then in the beginning they hate each other. At the end of the time they like, they're best buds now. And I think a lot of that times that doesn't work, and I don't think I've seen it work as well as in this game personally.
Yeah, I don't think I have seen that either. But yeah, I think. One of the reasons I was so hesitant to actually, have Last of Us Part 2 was because I thought the ending to that game is perfect. It's one of the rare perfect video game endings, in my opinion. Like that game ends and you feel like, okay, this is a perfect like wrap up to this story. Like everything you need to tell has been told, and you don't need a continuation of this. Like, this is perfect. This is a perfect picture. This is like everything I need. So right now I'm at the point where I'm like, yeah, fuck, give me another Last of Us, especially after replaying it. It's like, yeah, sure. If you feel like you have something more interesting and worthwhile to tell, I won't stop. I won't even dare to stop you. Why would I? And I really hope that they have something significant to do and to say with these characters again, and not just, tack on it because that's a strong franchise and some people want more from it. Because I was not one of those people. I was like, no, I'm fine with this being this one perfect thing, and I don't need this to become a franchise. This is fine. The DLC was, that was in there was good too. Did some elaboration on Ellie's character that was not necessary, but was okay and wasn't too much. But after that, we'll see what part 2 does. I still trust Naughty Dog. I mean, they haven't disappointed me so far, not really. So I'm willing to believe that they still have a substantial thing to add to the story of the first part. But if you don't, even if you are not interested in part 2, you don't need to be interested in part 2 to just play this game and have a perfect story, in my opinion. So
yeah, true.
Just fucking, and the gameplay is fine. The stealth sections are fine. I don't like stealth games. I didn't mind them in this. There was one part at the very beginning that was kind of if you don't really know what you have to do, because the game doesn't do a lot of hand holding really at the beginning, and that might be a bit tough. But once the first time you actually have to engage with the clickers and stuff like that. But aside from that, the difficulty is really good, and everything is in that game, in my opinion, is really well paced. So I love that game. I think it's one of the best games of all time, and I can't imagine them actually making something better in this or something. I hope they make something that lives up to that.
In part 2. What I'm saying about Last of Us 2, I don't need it, but I'm like, if Naughty Dog says I need a part 2 of Last of Us, then I need a part 2 of Last of Us. I trust
yeah,
them.
Sure.
And
I'm just glad they postponed that and put them, to May or something in 2020, because I don't want that to interfere with Final Fantasy VII remake. Holy shit!
And I think it's funny that we talk about Bioshock Gift and The Last of Us after each other, because I've got to give the stage to Choo Choo to repeat the criticisms I gave Bioshock Infinite, and I give them to The Last of Us. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. No, I love the relationship and dynamic between the two main characters from different worlds. One made of metal, one made of wood. Ladder and pallet, born to be together. Same game. No. But seriously, although I don't know, Last of Us might have the ladder porn title taken off it by Death Stranding recently. Who knows?
Yeah, so I've heard.
But okay, so obviously I don't like The Last of Us as much as you do, but I did play it. I did enjoy it. It was a qualified experience, but ultimately I finished it and was mostly amazed by it. So acting, performances, narrative, incredible stuff. One of the greatest voice acting video game performances ever. Like you say, those characters seem to really exist. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Really great emotional storytelling. Had no problem with that. I thought it set a new standard in video games, which I don't think has been broken yet. I mean, Red Dead Redemption 2 has come close, but I still
talk about nuanced facial animation, like in the dialogue scenes. I mean, Uncharted already paved some road in that territory, but I think Last of Us just really upped the ante even more.
Yeah, they did have the same ambition as well. Uncharted and Last of Us had completely different ambitions in.
Yeah, sure. It was more about the set pieces and the action and everything, and jokey jokes and stuff like that. And yeah, Last of Us just really focused on the character drama and making these characters seem real, and combine that with the voice acting. Yeah, just fucking stellar work by Naughty Dog and everyone involved. Holy shit.
I really loved the ending of the game. I thought it ended perfectly. I'll point out a few things in the Last of Us that I really loved. One of the things that really impressed me was the first time you got to shoot and kill someone. And I loved the way that it's very hard during the first few times in the games when you go to kill someone and your crosshairs are shaking all over the place, and it's very difficult to control because the character is shaking and is out of control. And I really love that aspect of it. But the more people you kill, the more steady your crosshair becomes. I thought that was perfect. That was awesome.
Yeah, and they actually have like Ellie. There's a segment in the game where you play as her, and as a person who grew up in this world, her aim is actually way better than Joel's. Like she has like almost perfect aim. She's actually like because she like to show that this character grew up in this world. She's like doesn't know another world than this. This like she's familiar with this. And it's like interesting the ways to like subtly use gameplay to like tell things about the character or tell things about the world.
Yeah. I also love the way at the end of the game you get the moral decision to kill the doctors at the end of the game, and you shouldn't kill them, but how angry are you with them? Do you know what I mean? Like, can you maintain that compassion? It's a really fantastic scene where it puts you, and morally you shouldn't do it, but however you're just so furious at that point. And you get sort of that notion of how perhaps in real life, how hard it would be to control yourself in that situation. So there are many great things about it. However, the gameplay for me, much like Brack was complaining about BioShock Infinite, I don't know. I always felt like in that game, it's like Human Metal was saying, sometimes BioShock Infinite to him felt a bit cubey, a bit like, to be pushed down a certain direction. I always felt in that game, you walk down a corridor and then you came to like a battle arena with some very conveniently placed cover, etc., with a certain specific route to get through. And the thing is that's okay, because video games are video games, but when you have a game that realistic, it's quite jarring to suddenly arrive in a battle arena. Like, you always know when you're about to come into combat because you see that exit, you see that hall. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you're in an RPG or something and you're walking down a corridor and you see a big circle and you're like, oh, boss fight. It's that same thing like with The Last of Us. And of course, the fucking ladders and the fucking balance. Like, how many? Oh my god! But overall, I did really enjoy that game, and I think the good stuff outweighed the bad, and by a significant margin. So yeah, I don't really have. And looking back on it, now when I think back to The Last of Us, like all good memories from life, the bad stuff kind of fades away in reflection and just kind of leaves the good stuff there remaining and what you really enjoyed about it. So fantastic game. Yeah. And you could say it really kind of stole your hearts. Talking about stealing, that's going to bring us on to the next game, which is also released in 2013. And a big shout out for 2013. God damn. That was a killer year, because there have been less like 1, 2, 3. This is like the fourth game from 2013. So that is an excellent year of gaming. And again, talking about stealing, Grand Theft Auto 5. So yeah, Grand Theft Auto 5 is one of the best games of all time, in my opinion. Grand Theft Auto 5 is easily the best Grand Theft Auto game by a massive margin. So before, I've always liked Grand Theft Auto games because they allow you they kind of unleash your id, right? Like they're pure like fucking gaming libido. They just kind of you can go around and kill anybody and drive fast cars and smash things up and blow things up and whatever. But until Grand Theft Auto 5, I always thought like Grand Theft Auto for me was a game that I would play, and then inevitably it would always devolve into shooting people, getting chased by the police officers, getting killed, ending up in hospital, and then repeat until I got bored of it and switched it off. I would very rarely make any story progress in the game.
I know plenty of people that like there's always a segment in like all the Grand Theft Autos where it's like, oh, this section of the city you can't go through yet, right? Like it's a different island or whatever. And I know plenty of people that will have never seen that island. They will never have gone there, like because they just like they don't go far enough into the story to actually go there.
Yeah. I can totally appreciate that. I think that's the thing with the story missions. You really have to train yourself to like push ahead. So I mean, but I mean, I don't think I ever finished Vice City. I finished 3, I remember, and I finished 4. And 4 was a real chore to finish because
Oh
goddamn,
yeah.
that game was huge. That game was a monster. That game was long as fuck.
Uh,
Yeah, this is
there's
like
also
the end.
definitely
But
some quality of life stuff that I'm so happy that they like learned from 4, because the way there and like the game had no checkpoints. Like if you died, you have to like restart the mission from beginning. But also it includes like going to the guy's house, rushing the cutscene, driving to the mission area, and then starting the mission again. So it was really a big chore for whenever you like died or whatever. Like it would just like crush you.
yeah, Christ, in Grand Theft Auto 5, it's like that, like you say, that quality of life is like firstly, you have the checkpoint system. If you fail that mission enough time, they just give you the option to straight up skip it. I didn't actually ever skip a mission, but they do give you the option just to skip the mission, which is awesome. Take the easy way to the end. But no, but this was the first GTA to have a solid enough story to actually grab my attention and to feel like it wasn't, the story missions weren't something that I was doing kind of arbitrarily. It was something that I wanted to do because I wanted to see how the story progressed, and the way that they had 3 distinct characters with 3 distinct personalities and stuff. And the thing is, like, that was so really well done that when I played as those characters in the story, I generally behaved like those characters. You know, when I was playing as Michael, I generally behaved dignified, but with sudden flashes of anger or whatever and like outbursts. When I was playing as Franklin, I just played as a straight up nice guy who never did, you know, butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. And and then when I played as Trevor, I played as a fucking maniac. Like so I think that was a really good dynamic, and the story was great, and it sort of flowed really well, and mercifully, it wasn't too long. It felt like it wrapped up just when it should have, I think.
But it also was a lot of fun. Like the every
Yeah.
mission felt like distinct. Like I can definitely like, and also all of it feels like inspired by movies I love. Like I definitely didn't feel like they have a mood board like in their like office, which is like a lot of pictures of like Michael Mann movies and like Tony Scott movies, and, like all those movies where they like took like set pieces from, or like they like just stitch a little bit of this, and like, oh yeah, we have like a heist that feels a little bit like Thief, or like, oh, we're definitely gonna do like the heist from Heat, like from beginning to end almost, and like stuff like that. And it really, like, it felt like a fun to recognize all that, and to like replay that stuff you love, but this time like actually like have like a control in it.
Yes, absolutely. The main like heists of the game were just like really fantastic gameplay sequences, and there was nothing, like, the difficulty level was just right. There was nothing ever that really frustrated you or got too hard or whatever. Everything was manageable. It was well paced. It was well structured. And then of course you have the world itself, which is still, even now, one of the most brilliant inclusive worlds that has ever been made in a video game. You can do fucking anything in that game, basically. You know, fly helicopters, jets, parachuting. I don't know. It's just endless, basically. And the amount of topography they have in the game, from forests to mountains to beaches to deserts, it's fan-fucking-tastic. And then, of course, you have the online component as well. So at the time of release back in 2013, let's be honest, the online component was garbage. It just basically devolved into you spawning into the world and being immediately shot dead by some douchebag, but like, who then hounded you and killed you like about 30 more times before you finally escaped or gave up playing. But like now, these days, the online component of that game is fucking excellent. It's really crackerjack. There is like the main game itself, there's just an endless variety of shit to do. Whether you're on like F-Zero tracks high in the sky, blazing around with like 16 other races, or doing the heists that Brack and I have been doing recently, where you do like setup missions and then actually doing the heists or whatever. There's just so much variety, like parachute missions, like just the random things. Like, you know, you have a competition with all the players in the game, like driving backwards. How far can you drive backwards without crashing? Simple things like that. like really make the game world unpredictable. And Brack and I would often spawn into a session and we'll be like, okay, let's do some heist missions or whatever, and we'll get completely fucking sidetracked doing something totally different.
Last night we actually played GTA Online, and they have they added this update where they're peyote plants in the world, and if you eat one of those plants, you turn into an animal, right? And that's and you can just walk down the street at puppies and try to bite people. It's they always have crazy stuff in there for you to do, and that's fun. I have a little bit frustrations with the GTA Online, where there's definitely a kind of a little bit pay to win aspect to it. Not pay to win, but they have a lot of cool content behind a paywall, which is not a literal paywall, but it's either you have to grind or you have to pay money, or in my case you have to abuse the faults within the game so that you can get that money for free.
Yeah, well, they did add a casino, and I think Brack's eyes is basically lit up and went, "Ooh, money!"
Yeah, I definitely abused that casino, and actually the flaws in GTA Online where you can just if you lose, you just quit the game and it isn't safe, so you can just gamble whatever you want. So yeah, that's fun for me. But about the single player, back to the single player, definitely the details in this game world is what's make this game special, and you feel everything is thought out. For example, all the radio stations, it's not just random music, but it's every station has their own distinct personality. They have the distinct DJs. They have advertisements, on every radio station. It's a funny joke, but also fits with that radio station. And other radio stations have different ads. Just the eye for detail. It just the radio stations, is already insane. And then they have that for every aspect of the game.
Yeah, it's a perfectly made video game, and the thing is, my ultimate compliment to Grand Theft Auto 5, and one of the reasons it really made my list and crept up over years, and put itself above other video games is the fact that it was released in 2013. It's 2019 now. I'm still playing it regularly. That is the ultimate mark of a quality game. It never gets boring.
Yeah.
It's
some of those games, when those older games, after a while, after so many years, you have to you have buried it. You forgot about it, you buried it, and then you have to dig it up again with a shovel, right? And with this game, you don't need that. But talking about shovels, metal.
Wow. Damn it, our segues are on fire today.
Yeah,
right. Okay, so moving on to 2014, the first thing on my list was, in my opinion, definitive action game. Now we get to the definitive platformer of the last decade, which is, in my opinion, Shovel Knight, obviously. Come on, people. Talking about indie games that hit it big. Shovel Knight is probably the Kickstarter success story, or at least one of the big ones, where it garnered enough of a budget to being funded to actually being made, and then kept on chugging along, raking more and more people into playing it, and just
releasing more and more
more and more stuff for free. At least if you bought the game already, once. This is basically a mixture of Mega Man, of DuckTales, of Castlevania, so all things I like from classic video games. And puts them in a blender, and then here comes a knight with a shovel who has to fight 8 other knights and try to defeat an evil sorceress, and also maybe try to reunite with the love of his life. And that also spun off 2 DLCs so far. Plague of Shadows, where you play Plague Knight, one of the Order of No Quarter, right? That's what they are called. I have a T-shirt that says that. those are the Order of Knights that you have to fight. And yeah, I didn't like Plague of Shadows that much because the movement in that was a bit weird. You have to use explosion to move yourself forward, and I couldn't really get the hang of that. But the next one that came after that was Spectre of Torment, where you play Spectre Knight, and I think that's in parts even better than the original game. Like, holy shit, the movement in the game is fantastic, and it has its own neat little story to tell, which is kind of a prequel-ish, at least when it comes to Spectre Knight's story, to the things that happen in Shovel Knight later. And that was also a fun little, surprisingly emotional story. And Shovel Knight is surprisingly emotional as well by the end. And yeah, I'm amazed with how little kind of, cinematic tools that game has, and how much it manages to do with those when it comes to storytelling. And there's so many like quirky, fun characters that populate that universe, that are in the towns and on the somewhere on the map and stuff like that. Adventurers that you fight, and everyone is funny or sympathetic or hilarious or is like this weird, quirky bad guy, and just the whole world is like fucking oozing charisma. And the mechanics are super tight. You have basically like one of your main weapons is like this pogo jump, lifted right out of DuckTales. And you can use your shovel to reflect beams and stuff like that, and shovel enemy attacks away and stuff. Just the game is super well designed from beginning to end. And like I said, Spectre of Torment as well. They remix the stages for that a lot. It's basically a whole different game. The stages even look different in terms of backgrounds in certain parts and stuff like that. The music is remixed, like, and that shit. If you own the game or if you bought Shovel Knight, you get those DLCs for free, which is still ridiculous to me, considering how many fucking game companies try to nickel and dime you for every little piece of shit, cosmetic, DLC bullshit, and season passes. And here's Yacht Club Games saying, okay, you bought our game, okay, you're gonna get this and this for free. And like, what the fuck? And those are full fucking games.
Yeah, it's like because it was of the Kickstarter. Like, it was in the Kickstarter, they would say, like, they make this game. It was like, but still, they made like, it's not like an hour DLC or something. It's like campaigns, like 4 campaigns of like 6-8 hours or something. Yeah. With their own like media games and upgrade mechanics and music and like there's like a
story to tell.
It's insane. But it's like awesome. Like, I think Shovel Knight is one of those games that like I could see it like being in somebody's game of the year like 3 years, like because like of the DLC.
And we still got one coming. Like the newest DLC, King of Cards, it's been in the pod for a while. They needed a lot of time to make that happen because apparently it's got card game mechanic in it too, aside from, the normal campaign and stuff. And they're branching out. They're also doing like a Smash Bros-esque 8-bit version of Shovel Knight. It's called Shovel Knight Strike or Smash. I don't remember. But that's gonna happen. They have another studio develop a Shovel Knight Dig, which is kind of like SteamWorld Dig, I think.
Oh, Dig. I thought you said Shovel Knight.
No,
Dig.
Not Dig.
There's probably like a Shovel Knight dildo somewhere. That's like the shovel.
Yeah,
That's,
and
nasty.
I'm super. Shovel Knight was also, as a character, was in a bunch of other indie games. Like he was already in a fight in some weird fighting game. I don't remember.
Yeah, I played
like
that game. But
yeah, so that character is known now, and after this, I'm super interested to see what Yacht Club Games does next, because they had already done a poll where it's like, hey, if you want to see another game in this universe, what style of game do you want? Do you like a Link to the Past adventure kind of styled game with the Shovel Knight characters? Do you want a kart racer maybe? What do you guys want? And yeah, I wonder what they're actually going to do with that. So that's going to be super great. But right now I'm looking forward to King of Cards, and I can't wait to buy the game for the 3rd time because you get the shit for free, but I'm like, hey, I bought the game digitally on Wii U. Then I was like, man, this is so fucking amazing. I need this. I need a physical version of that. So I got that for PS4, and now Switch gets a treasure trove version with all the DLCs combined on one card and all the stuff. And I was like, yeah, I think I want that game on Switch as well to be able to play it on the go. So fuck yeah, it's one of my favorite games, not only in the last decade but of all time. So yeah, definitely gonna buy that the 3rd time.
So I like about Shovel Knight. I think what makes Shovel Knight so good is that it feels like it's the your nostalgia memories of like a retro game instead of actually being one of those retro games.
Yeah.
Like it's not as difficult or as hard as those games, but it just feels like it gaps those nostalgia feelings and it pushes those buttons perfectly while making like just a really fun platformer.
Yeah, it's like what people said about Sonic Mania. That Sonic Mania is what you plays like what you remember the old Sonic's games play like, but it actually plays better because your nostalgia is playing into that. So I can't attest to this because I'm not a hardcore Sonic fan. Tutu has maybe a different opinion on that, but a lot of people said like, hey, Sonic Mania plays how you think that the old Sonic games played in your nostalgic memory, but it actually plays a bit better. So I wonder what you, Tutu, what you think about that and how you felt about how Shovel Knight felt in terms of gameplay.
Judging by the Sonic Mania thing, I don't know. I mean, I have like the Super Famicom Mini, and so I've played the older Sonic games on that, and I don't know. The old Sonic games still play perfectly, as well as Sonic Mania. I will say, Sonic Mania. I really liked Sonic Mania when it first came out, but I have since sort of settled into a kind of understanding that the game is quite boring, actually. And whilst
So you're saying it's exactly like the Sonic games as I remember them. That's what you're saying?
No, because Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 are just much better games than Sonic Mania. Like at the time, I was really impressed about it, but each level was just too long in Sonic Mania, and it's just too tiring an experience. Like the old Sonic games, you could sit down, you could play in one sitting. Basically, the Sonic Mania you couldn't. But anyway, we're talking about a game that it doesn't deserve to be talked about at length here. Shovel Knight, however, Human Metal said something very pertinent. It's not just one of his greatest, games of the last decade. It's one of his favorite games of all time. I'm absolutely with Human Metal on that. I think it is. I agree with him. It's the best platformer released in the last decade, and it's arguably the best 2D platformer game of all time. For my money, in my opinion, I fucking love that game. I love it so much. In fact, when we originally made this list, it was on my list, and then I gave it to Human Metal because I know like Human Metal loves that game, as much as I do. But yeah, the perfect soundtrack, perfect controls.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The soundtrack. Fuck.
Yeah,
Jake Kaufman at his fucking best. I've listened to that soundtrack so many times to both the original and the Spectre of Torment version. I love them both unconditionally. It's one of the best pseudo 8-bit soundtracks ever fucking made. It's so good.
And also the graphics too. One of the best pseudo 8-bit graphic performances of all time. It's gorgeous. It looks 8-bit, but it's obviously not. But it looks fucking gorgeous. It's got charm out the ass. Every single boss is unforgettable, and it's got the perfect difficulty curve as well, where it starts off piss easy, and by the end it's quite difficult. But it's always, when you need it to be, it's always forgiving. I'll never forget the moment where at the end of Shovel Knight, you come to the boss rush. What? The fuck? That's difficult to say when you're drunk. The boss rush area where you have to fight all of the main bosses that you fought previously. And when I dropped into that chamber, I was like, oh, you got to be fucking kidding me. No, like this is going to be a real chore. And then, I defeated the first boss, and then mercifully they chucked a chicken at me. And you get to refill your life between.
Like you do.
Yeah, well, it is a banquet hall. It makes sense in a weird way. So,
here's the thing. Sorry, yeah, continue.
They refill your energy between bosses, right? And that completely changed something that I was absolutely dreading. Like when I dropped into that chamber, I was like, yeah, no, please don't do it to me. Like they changed something that you were absolutely dreading I was absolutely dreading, into something that just became a real fun roar down nostalgia lane, to replay all the bosses that they just changed it into a pure piece of fun. And I love that about that.
For people who felt like, hey, but I wanted a real challenge. I wanted to fight these bosses without the health upgrade. You can just play New Game Plus because then you just get bombs out of that fucking dinner plate where that has you can shovel the bombs towards the enemies and they do some extra damage, but you don't get a health refill. Yeah. So that's super hard. I wasn't able to fucking finish that in New Game Plus. I tried only once. I was like, holy fuck, this is too hard. I'm sorry, Shovel Knight, but I might try one of these days again. Maybe once I get the Switch version. But yeah, if you play it on normal, that doesn't happen. So that's great. It's like, hey, if you want the challenge, you're gonna get that. You can have that later.
Exactly, you can get the cake and eat it. Like perfect DLC. Again, I don't really like Plague Knight that much, to be honest. But the Spectre Knight, fantastic stuff. And I also love the way that it has, as Human Metal was alluding to, it has an emotional sting and a tail. I mean, how do you do that with an 8-bit game? I don't know. It works. It really does. Nothing. I can't say anything bad about Shovel Knight. I absolutely adore that game. It's fucking fantastic. Just from, watching from an overview, it's just a really fantastic game. And talking about watching things from an overview, we're going to move on to the next game, which is Overwatch.
God damn it!
You're on fire, Jitsu. You're on fire. You're doing it. It's working.
You're burning. You're already dead.
Oh man. Oh jeez. So yes, Overwatch is. Hang on. I should preface this by saying we're in 2016 now. So I don't like online multiplayer games very much. Usually my thing with online multiplayer games is I play them for like maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks maximum, and I'm bored of them. Like, I just don't like that kind of thing of that kind of gameplay aspect of just doing the same thing again and again and again and again. So your Call of Duties or your Battlefields or whatever, I'm just not into that type of thing. However, Overwatch blew me away. Overwatch was fucking fantastic. You take a really well-designed group of characters who all play very, very, very differently, and you stick them into this gorgeous, beautiful, like, I don't want to say cel-shaded, but like very chunky, colorful world that is perfectly designed. And it's just brilliant.
And then you make some porn out of it. That's what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, of course you got to make porn out of that. You can't have a character as cute as Diva without making some porn about it. But like that game is so fantastically designed in its team aspect, where like that. One of the problems with other first-person shooters, like in Call of Duty, in the team games, everybody's running around, they're doing their own thing, they're trying to get the highest like kill streaks or whatever. And in games like Battlefield, where you're supposed to be really gelling as a team, often you'll be doing your own thing and there's not much communication between the team. But Overwatch is so perfectly designed that everybody just sticks together. Everybody really tries their best as a team, and the individual characters are so well designed that it's like, I can't explain it. It's not something that can be readily explained. It just, all the cogs fit into place perfectly. And there's this whole feeling of, like, usually in a game of Overwatch, everybody's really putting everything they have into the success of the team. Everybody's trying as hard as they can. Everybody's trying to save everybody else's asses. Everybody's pushing for the same objective. It's a really fantastically designed game, and I had so much fun with it. And the thing is, like, I was playing that by myself and I was having so much fun, and I had so much fun with it that I think I played it for about like 4 months or something straight, which is the longest I think I've ever survived in any online multiplayer game ever. And then finally, at the end of like 5 months or something, my interest started to go down. And then Brack got the game, and it totally reignited my interest, because finally I had like one of my best friends to play with, and then boom, it like restarted, and then Brack and I played for about like the next 6 months or something in that game.
I played it for a long time. I think nowadays, like, we can't stand the game anymore, but that's how much we play it for. Like, we enjoyed it a lot for a long time. And it's like it's literally like was an addiction for a little while. Like I really loved Overwatch. I really liked it. It's just a really fun like objective based game. It's like you have like it's not as repetitive as some other games because like the characters play so differently. You can switch a character and they add new modes to it, and they're like seasonal modes, and it's really fun. And after a while, it was less fun, and then I stopped playing it. But for that golden moment, the golden few months, it was like really enjoyable, and we like tried out strategies, and we tried to work it together. And then like, oh, I really don't like this character, but all of a sudden, I started playing this character. Oh man, this character is amazing! Like in the beginning, I really played like Roadhog, like this big hawking dude who's like a tank almost. And then I started playing like Pharah, who's like the flying one, and you can like shoot people off like the sides of the map, and it's like the best feeling when you like shoot two people and like they just fly like into nowhere. Like amazing moments of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Brack and I, when we were playing in our peak, we were king shits of fuck mountain. We were kicking all kinds of ass on that game. Usually, I mean, you basically use Brack as like a bullet sponge and then just basically pick off whoever's left. But we were kicking all kinds of ass together on that. And like Human Metal was saying about Yacht Club games, about giving you like free DLC and stuff. Overwatch did exactly the same thing. They released like always releasing new characters or seasonal modes and stuff. Like whenever a holiday would come along, like Christmas, they'd have some Christmas themed, like an update or something with a new map or a new game mode. And Halloween was always a big one, new map or new game mode or whatever. They were always releasing new content gradually. And like, I know Blizzard recently are getting a lot of shit for whatever they're doing in China. I'm really beleaguered and I don't even pay attention to that crap, but I know they're doing something bad that everybody hates. But but you know, I have some love for Blizzard because of the way that they treated me with Overwatch. I bought that game full price. I enjoyed it even when there was no updates, but then the updates just kept coming. Always something fun was coming in Overwatch during my time of playing it, and it was brilliant. And also the loot box system was one of the best loot box systems of any game. And I know that's like saying, you know, that was the best case of fucking influenza I ever had in my life. But like, you know, it was really well done, and it never felt like I had to pay money to get what I wanted to get. Because the loot boxes drip to you with like enough frequency, and you got enough kind of like high profile stuff that I never really thought that I needed to like put extra cash down, especially the way you could earn coins or whatever it was, and then you could like selectively choose to buy anything that you could afford at that time. So I really like that aspect. And also best skins ever in any game ever made. Like I've never felt the desire to want to have any skins in any game more than I did in Overwatch. It was like, God damn, I gotta have that fucking Zenyatta fucking Nutcracker skin. If it's even if it kills me, if it's the last thing I ever do, I'm gonna get that skin. So yeah, quality, fantastic game. It has a lot of personality as well, I would say. Talking about personality, Human Metal, what's next on that?
5 personalities almost.
Before we follow up on that great segue, are you guys gonna look at Overwatch 2?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well,
oh man, I'm going to for sure.
Yeah, but it's not like a sequel. It's like more like an update or whatever.
The thing is, that just makes it so difficult for me. Like it's gonna finally have single player component, which apparently with story in it, which is the thing that I always wanted from Overwatch. The moment I looked at the first trailer for this, I was like, I either want an animated series for this, an animated movie, or a game with a heavy story campaign, because these characters are awesome and I want a story to tell. And then they made a fucking multiplayer only game, and I was so sad about that. I was like, okay, this doesn't appeal to me. I don't care, but I want to care about these characters because they are designed so well, and this looks cool. This looks like a great update version of G.I. Joe or something. And I never got that. And now they at least try to do something with that, but at the same time they're being real corporate assholes in certain regards, and I don't feel like I can play that game in good conscience, so I probably
and
won't
also
touch that either. So
they had like seasonal moments, which is like more like single player, like co-op type stuff, and they weren't all that great. So I'm not sure if they're like what's going to change to actually make those co-op single player segments actually fun.
It's gonna stay the same gameplay, and you're probably gonna fight bots. The important thing for me would be how story heavy that game is. If there are like some really cool cutscenes and cinematics in between, I'd be fine with just fighting bots on normal Overwatch maps. That would be fine for me. But all the other thing around that and how they have acted in recent weeks, and it's like, okay, maybe not. There are enough other games I can play. And enough other time-consuming games to play. Speaking of which, time-consuming games, and talking about personality, Persona 5, 2017. Yeah, definitive games. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, definitive action. Shovel Knight, definitive platformer. Persona 5 was the definitive JRPG for me for the last decade. I was wrestling with myself if I would put this on my list or Xenoblade Chronicles. Could have been either one. I didn't want to put 2 on there, so I decided Persona because just in terms of how much time I spent in that game and how much joy it gave me and how invested I was in the story and everything. And Persona 5 just grabbed me from the very first moment. It was my first Persona game. I haven't really touched any of the Persona or Shin Megami Tensei game, which is the whole universe that is set in or that belongs to. And I mean, I looked at Persona 3 and was like, hey, this sounds interesting what I hear about it, but the dungeons are randomly generated and you can't control your party members, only your main character. And it's like, it's not that cool. Persona 4, even closer than that, still randomly generated dungeons. And like, graphics don't look that cool. And I was like, yeah, okay, maybe the next one. And then I saw a trailer for Persona 5 and was like, holy shit, this game looks so good. It's one of the best looking games I've ever seen, just in terms of pure fucking style. Like this fucking comic art, comic-esque art, anime art, with super interesting and high contrast colors and everything, and really well designed characters, fantastic music, and everything that game was doing was speaking to me. It's like, okay, I have to get into this. 100 hours later, I finished that game, and I was like, fuck, that was amazing. But I haven't played all the character stories. Think I'm gonna I'm gonna keep playing this a bit more. This has a new Game Plus function. You keep all your personas. Yeah, I think I'm gonna just start this for a while and see where it goes. Another 100 hours later, I finished that game for the second time. Yeah, I played through Persona 5 2 times in a row, and yeah, the second time wasn't really 100 hours again because you can fast lane a lot of the stuff because you already know what you're doing and everything. But it was still a long time. It was at least 50 hours, half of the first runtime. So 150 hour game, hours spent on that game, and I don't regret a single minute because I had so much fun. All the characters are fantastic, the graphics are fantastic, the music is amazing. And the story is great too. I love it. I think the themes it tackles and what it does with them and how it tackles them is super interesting. I've never seen it in a JRPG because most JRPGs I've played are set in either a science fiction setting or in a fantasy setting, naturally, classic fantasy stuff like. And Persona 5 is set in our world and deals with stuff like mobbing, like sexual abuse, like a lot of political stuff that is very, very like relevant to stuff that's happening right now in all over the world, and the way it deals with that shit, and a lot of social media, a bunch of interesting themes and how it tackles them. Some more superficial than others, but some surprisingly like well thought out, like in terms of discourse, what the game tries to do with that. And I was super surprised by that, and I didn't expect that from a fucking JRPG. And I was like, man, this is really good stuff. And the ending, like what that all culminates in, is so good and so rewarding. And I just, when the credits roll, I just was, for the first time, I was just sitting on my couch, just fucking floored. I was just like, okay, this might be one of the best game experiences I've ever had. And I can't believe that even after 100 hours, I wasn't sick of that fucking game. Yeah, and apparently I wasn't because, like I said, I played through it.
You played through it twice.
Time. Yeah, which never has
Now he's going
happened
to
to me.
play
I
through
think
it
at least not for
3 more times. He's going to play through it 5 times, people.
Yeah, maybe. There's an extended version coming out, so I'm obviously gonna get that. Fuck me, right? Yeah.
Extended
Persona
version.
5.
It's like already like 100-hour game.
There's even more. That game doesn't need more content, people. It really doesn't, but it's gonna get more content. Oh well, but yeah, I'm whipped, so I'm gonna get that. Yeah, one of my favorite RPGs of all time now. I think Persona 5 is fucking stellar, and I can't wait to see how they're gonna top that with maybe someday Persona 6. I can't imagine, because I'm in love with the Phantom Thieves. I think it's a fun, fucking fantastic story.
Are you saying that the Phantom Thieves they didn't that they stole your heart? Is that what you're trying to say?
Sure. Wait, what? Yeah, of course, that works too. Wait, do you guys want to... I know Choo played... Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll talk about Persona 5. Persona 5 is excellent. Persona 5 is probably Persona 5 is the best JRPG I've ever played. I've not finished it. I've put 30 hours into that. That's not chump change either. And the thing is, like, that's a game I'm going back to. There are many games that I play and then I give up on or whatever, and I stop playing or whatever, and I don't come back to. But with Persona 5, I was very, very careful to leave that in a state where I could come back to it. Like, because I'm not quite sure. Maybe I got really busy and I had to stop playing, or some other game that took precedence over. Maybe was released or something. It might have been. I think it might have been Red Dead 2 actually, which was released, and then it was like, man, I got to stop playing this because I just can't hold my anticipation to play Red Dead anymore. Ironically, I'm still playing Red Dead now, 1 year later. But that game was absolutely fantastic, and I have no complaints about it whatsoever. I agree completely with everything Human Metal has said. Fantastic soundtrack, great characters, great story, beautiful graphics. Like, I just love it. There's the times when you go to, like, what's it called, the Red Room? No, it's not the Red Room. That's from fucking The Haunting of Hill House.
I don't remember it, but yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
What you mean.
Yeah, that place with Igor. Like, that music, man, it's always like, whenever I get into that room, it's like, just set the controller down and just, like, enjoy that theme tune for like 30 seconds before continuing on with what I'm doing. It's such a good
that
soundtrack.
Room, also one of the things, they do something with that character and with that room and everything. And if you have played the other Persona games, that's even more. That's a lot more rewarding than it was for me. But that tells you how much thought they put into that, because apparently the former voice actor of Igor was replaced for some reason, and some people were mad with that. But by the end of the game, there was a reason for that, and it was fucking. It's great stuff.
The other thing I like about that game, which has actually really sort of like the point I've been trying to make, I've been laboring over trying to make the same point, and I keep getting distracted. But like, there are natural lapses in the game where you can take a break between palaces. There's this whole period where the characters are kind of like trying to decide who's their next target or whatever. Like, it just feels like a natural chapter close where you can stop the game, and that's exactly where I did stop the game. So I am planning, and it's such a good game that I am planning to go back and pick up the next chapter. But the thing is, like, unlike a game like Overwatch or something, or like, as I experienced recently, like Darksiders 2, if you take a long time away from those games, they're skill-based games. So you come back and then you're completely lost with the controls. And likely, if you're in the latter part of the game, like I was in Darksiders 2 recently, because I had to take a month away from the game, and I came back to it and then was completely lost with the controls and everything. It's like, well, fuck this game. Also had no health potions. Fuck no, having no health potions. Anyway, but like that, Persona 5 is not a skill-based game. It's a strategic game, right? So you can never really truly be lost in a turn-based combat system. Do you know what I mean? So it's very easy just to come back, and even if you can't remember which types of personas mix with which, it basically has that information if you've already saved it. So it's a very, very easy game to pick up and get back into it. I mean, sure, you might get like be wondering, oh, what was the story about previously? But generally speaking,
that's what Wikipedia is for.
that's what Wikipedia. It's like that. It's what Wikipedia is. But the thing is, the game, the story is so strong. I remember exactly what happened up until this point.
So there you go.
So that's the point I was trying to make. It's such a fantastic game. I'm actually going back to it. It's just, when I have time to go back to it, when I have a gap in my gaming schedule, Persona 5 is going to be played again. It's a game that I've stopped playing, but it hasn't been forgotten. It's just like slightly on the back burner. Excellent stuff. Next on your list, Himameto.
Oh god. Final Fantasy 15. No. No. But we'll stay in Japan. We go to Nintendo. And also 2017, which was also a good year for games. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Which is now one of my favorite Zelda games, I think. But probably surprisingly, even though I consider it one of the best games of the last decade, is incredibly flawed one in my opinion. Probably the most flawed game on my list that has parts that I don't like to the parts I like, and I still would put it on this list because it does so many things right, in my opinion, that it deserves to be there. This is the first real open world Zelda game, and all the mechanics they put in there to make that open world interesting and to make it feel like to give it like a flow, to give it like a very seamless feel, are I think masterful. You start out as this plateau where you are still kind of pretty limited because you have to gather some skills that are necessary to traverse the entire open world. So you're basically running around and learning how to fucking play the game, while playing it, not with a fucking tutorial, but actually just playing the fucking game. And then you got your basic set of skills, you have traversed some of the world, and then you get your hang glider, and you just glide off the plateau, and here's your world, do whatever the fuck you want. Which is usually not my thing. As I've said when we talked about Skyrim, I'm intimidated by that stuff. I need a kind of clear through line. Otherwise, I'm gonna get lost. And I'm not gonna do shit. And I got lost in Breath of the Wild. I got fucking lost. I didn't do the main quest for I don't know how long. I just ran around. I was like, okay, well, what's over here? Oh, let's check this out. Oh, is this a new shrine? Oh, wait, could there be a treasure here? Maybe, maybe not. Oh, wait, what is this? Is this a new animal? Is this something I can take a photo of? Is this something that I can maybe cook? What the fuck? I usually this is not my style of game, but for some reason in Breath of the Wild it clicked for me, and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. I want to see. I want to go over there. Hey, that part of the map is uncharted, and I want to, before I check out the new stuff in the story, I want to check that stuff out and see if I can find something interesting there. And sometimes that was a bad idea because there was a powerful enemy there, and I got my ass handed to me. But sometimes there was very rewarding, and I don't know, the atmosphere of the game too, the soundtrack is very minimalist. It's also these small piano pieces, but that also really clicked for me. This was one of those Zen games for me, where it's I turn that shit on, I just lean back in the couch and then just fucking dive into that game. And then I look at my watch 6 hours later and holy shit, what the fuck? Time has passed. What has happened? Yeah, that's also.
That's the total. You've just described exactly every single session I ever played of Skyrim right there.
There you go. So that Breath of the Wild is my Skyrim experience, and it had probably to be a Zelda game to get me on board with that stuff. But I love the open world of this. I think it's massively constructed. There's so many interesting areas. It's pretty varied. There are a lot of magical moments where you just come to a certain part and you gaze at the fucking landscape and holy shit, this looks fucking great, even for a Switch game, and I can't wait to go everywhere that I'm seeing. And you basically can climb everything. there's some frustrating mechanic in there that when it rains you can't climb up anymore, and you just basically have no other option than to wait
if you can't
that
climb,
shit out.
Can't you like use like a ladder?
No, not really. I'm sad this is not Last of Us, but in that regard, or Death Stranding.
No 3 men and climbing spikes and impregnating bitches.
What?
It's a Game of Thrones reference. Never mind. Carry on.
Okay. Sorry. God damn it. Was lost there.
No carrying like a tiny little baby with you that's like sees like enemies.
And a ladder?
Yeah.
And a ladder.
Let's get up in the next decade, maybe. I don't know. We'll see where Death Stranding lands on our opinions. But yeah.
See, Joel would be okay. Joel would be all right. Across the river on any pallet, up any mountain on a conveniently placed ladders. Sorry, Metal.
Yeah, no problem.
The title of this episode, Wrecking Human Metal's Train of Thought.
It's not a problem. I just want to get through this quickly because Jesus Christ, it's already almost 8. But anyway, I love the world of Breath of the Wild. What I didn't love were some of the mechanics, like I said, not being able to climb when it's raining is, in my opinion, super dumb. Like the stamina meter. Maybe in a world with smaller areas like Skyward Sword that has its merits. In a world where you're constantly running and walking, the terrain, not being able to run everywhere at fast pace can be really frustrating in my opinion. It's like, okay, guys, I mean, you can extend that shit, and you should in the beginning, and you can freely redistribute your skill points at a certain time to maybe give yourself more hearts instead of more stamina if you need it. But still, it's like, okay, I don't know if that needed to be in there. Your weapons break constantly. That wasn't too much of a problem for me. It was for a lot of people. It's like, hey, that doesn't make these weapons feel super great and super awesome. But I'm like, yeah, but at least it forces me to use more than one fucking weapon. Which I did because of this mechanic, because I just picked up every weapon that I had place for in my inventory, because I knew that, hey, my weapons are gonna break soon, so might as well get a new one. So I got to use all the weapons that the game gave to me, which I probably wouldn't have done in a game that didn't force me to do that. So I was fine with it. But the biggest thing that I didn't like about the game was probably the dungeons, because I love Zelda dungeons. I think like Ocarina of Time has fantastically themed dungeons. Even Skyward Sword, like everything about Skyward Sword kind of sucks, but the dungeons were pretty great. So they are not in Breath of the Wild. They all look the same, kinda. I mean, not from the outside, because they're like these giant, kind of robotic beasts, and that's interesting. But from the inside, they all feel like the same. They all kind of look the same, and even the bosses are like these weird specters of Ganon that all look the same in a way. And it's like they feel very sameish, and that's not what I'm used to from Zelda, and also that feels like they feel like kind of an afterthought to this game. The first thing they tried to do was create this fantastic open world, and they succeeded in that with that in every regard. And they were like, oh yeah, this is a Zelda game, we probably should dungeons in here, huh? And then they put these in there, and they don't feel great. So, the sequel has already been announced, so what I'm hoping for is Breath of the Wild open world with Skyward Sword or Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess dungeons in there. And that would be, for me, the perfect Zelda game. I can't think of a better Zelda concept for a Zelda game, because when playing Breath of the Wild in its best moments, this felt like playing through the game I was imagining when looking at the fucking manual for the first NES Legend of Zelda game. The artwork there, where you see cartoon Link looking at the skyline, this giant world opening up before him, like the artwork of that. I think just in terms of graphical style, in terms of atmosphere, in terms of like landscape and how wide that area, how wide that world is, and how varied that world is, that game captures the essence of what it means to go on a fucking adventure. And that's what Zelda is all about. So I think that game does that perfectly. But there's room for improvement. So I hope maybe Breath of the Wild 2 will be on the next Games of the Decade list then. But yeah, Breath of the Wild deserves its place just because it brings a lot of new stuff to that series, and in general does a lot of cool stuff for open world games. But yeah, I like it, but I also see room for improvement.
Yeah, well, it seems like they've made a very nice web, to which to build upon, right? So Brack and I haven't played the Breath of the Wild, but what's next on your list, Brack?
Next on my list is not the game we're going to talk about, because the next on my list is God of War, but we're going to talk about
Spider-Man, which is the last one on my list. So, Shooter looks confused.
Yeah, I am confused. I thought that was Brack's choice. I'm sorry about that. But thanks for ruining our final pick there, Brack. Good way to build anticipation, you douchebag. You're a metal.
Well, your segue was right, because we're going to talk about Spider-Man, so Web was appropriate. So it's all fine. So, last game on my list.
Chuchu, are you saying that you're angry? Are you saying that you're like almost like a god of war?
Too early.
Oh shit! Too early. Go back.
Way too early.
Yeah. Wait with your fucking segues. Jesus, you... Over anxious. Enthusiastic. Anyway, yes, Spider-Man from 2018, which I was alluding to earlier when I said Arkham City until that year was for me the definitive superhero game. And along came an itsy bitsy spider and rocked my world, because that game is so good. Like, this is for me the definitive version of one of my favorite characters. That's why I put it on the list, because this is the definitive version of Spider-Man for me right now. I think it's fantastic. Some people say, hey, Spider-Verse is probably the best Spider-Man thing they have experienced in recent years. And I can see that, and I might agree with that, but damn, this game is so good about making you feel like Spider-Man, making you crafting that perfect version of that character, telling us familiar but also somewhat new story for that character, like telling a really, really good Spider-Man, probably the best Spider-Man stories that you have seen outside of comic books. Spider-Verse included, but that is also not Peter Parker, or not. Well, Peter Parker is in it, but he's not the main character. Yeah, exactly. It's complicated. So, but this is one of the best Spider-Man / Peter Parker stories I've ever seen. I think his development with Otto Octavius, with Doc Ock, is fantastic in this game. Very slowly they build up that relationship and make you actually feel bad and feel for these characters once the story goes where it has to go, obviously, if you know your way around Spider-Man. And this is the best version of that, in my opinion. The combat is kind of copying stuff from Arkham City, but also like perfectly adapting it to the capabilities of Spider-Man. Like doing everything he should be able to do and making it super fun. Like, I had so much fun with that combat. I don't like doing all the side missions where you just fucking fight a bunch of baddies and even timed, and then you fucking go through a maze and stuff like that. I did that for that game because the combat felt so good to me. It felt just as good as Arkham City, only Arkham City was a really good combat for Batman. This is a really good combat for Spider-Man. Just like jumping around, bouncing around, like through the legs of one enemy and then webbing him up, jumping to the next one, throwing that enemy against the wall or off a building, because Spider-Man kills people. No, he webs them to the side of the building. But yeah, that felt great. And the best thing about this, and everyone was like worried maybe that they wouldn't pull off as well as Spider-Man 2 did, the web slinging, through the city, just the traversal for Spider-Man. And they fucking nailed that. Like, that's the best feeling part about the game. Just getting from one area to the next. There's fast travel in that game. I almost never use fast travel in that game.
But because I wanted to get the platinum trophy. Like, I enjoyed this game so much that I actually went for the platinum trophy, and you have to use the fast travel once. That's the only time I use the fast travel in Spider-Man.
And it's actually worth using it several times because there are some fun skits in there where Spidey sits or stands in the fucking subway and has some funny interactions with some people, like one guy who like dressed up like him and stuff like that. That made me chuckle. Like, there's, especially if you put on certain costumes, that's great. But in general, you don't need that because it's so much fun getting around the city, just as Spider-Man does, from swinging to one building to another, and just getting to the top of buildings and jumping off them. And the city looks so fucking amazing. New York, this is such a great rendition of New York, especially at night. And one of the best things, which I always thought, going back to Arkham City, that game works even though being kind of empty because it's only criminals, and gets shaky once you get to Arkham Origins and stuff like that. And, Arkham Knight tries to come up with new bullshit for that city to be kind of empty. New York in Spider-Man is not empty. You can go down to the street. There are a bunch of people. You can high-five them. You can say hello. It feels like a real living, breathing city. It feels like New York. It's great. I've been to New York 2 months ago, and it's like, yeah.
It's definitely emptier, though. It's definitely not as filled as New York. Thank God, no.
But it's like, hey, holy shit. This is in parts coming really close to the feel of that city, and in video game form, and it's fantastic. And yeah, this is, for me, I wouldn't be able to decide if this was for me now the definitive superhero. We don't have a definitive Superman game yet.
Superman 64.
Oh, we have 64, right?
No, definitive shitty. Yeah,
It's the only one. That's the game where you
it's
think
the
of
only
if
one.
somebody says
Hey, maybe
Superman
that's
game,
what Rocksteady is doing. Hey,
64.
if Rocksteady gives us a Superman game on the quality level of the Arkham series, I'm all there for it. But so far we haven't gotten that yet. But the definitive superhero game for me is either Arkham City or Spider-Man. It's gotta be one of those two. I can't decide right now, but they're both perfect examples of bringing a certain character to life in video game form and giving him all this, or her, whatever, giving them all the skill sets they need and make you feel like you are playing that character. And crafting a world around that character that feels familiar, but also kind of fresh and cool and fun to traverse. And yeah, both those games are perfect in that regard. I wouldn't even know how to improve that. And yeah, the DLC was fun too. And I hope we'll get a sequel soon. I can't imagine we won't. We will get one.
For sure.
Definitely.
And it's probably going to take a while, but they already rented the city and everything, so probably it's not going to take as long as making this first one. But like I said, like you said, like Spider-Man, super fun game. I loved swinging around in it. I think you can see like how much fun the gameplay loop is in the fact that I had no problem like doing all the side quests, like all the collectibles, all the stuff that could annoy me in other games. But in this game, you just need an excuse to go from point A to point B, because going from point A to point B is just like an insane amount of fun. And you just love like all the costumes you can wear. Like it makes the game look like super cool. Like the one I rocked the most was like the Spider Punk costume, where it's like a punk like guitarist. It's pretty.
I really like the green and black stealth suit. I thought that was pretty cool, especially at night because it glows.
You can see the details. Like that's just like a neon glow from it.
Wait, a stealth suit glows? What kind of fucking stealth suit glows?
Don't ask me. I think Reed Richards designed it or something. But yeah, it's weird.
It's comic book.
But it looks cool. It really looks cool. Doesn't do shit in terms of stealth, but I mean, though it has a special skill, I think, whatever. But yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah. And I think the game was so much fun that like after I finished it literally had a plot, but there's like nothing to do. I still like just started it up and just like swinging around, like not really going anywhere, just like going from one place to the city to the other place of the city.
It just feels so good. It's like I
feel like it feels so cool, like go to the highest point and jumping off, and like they really use the camera really well, and the camera kind of swings with the player. It's like it's insane amount of fun, and like I can't wait to like do it again and have like another excuse to just like swing through the city again.
Have you played the DLC?
No, I haven't played the DLC yet.
You should, because the thing is, if you like the story, that I was super surprised by that, but that DLC gives one of the major side characters a huge development in a certain way that I feel like I wonder if they're gonna recap that in the sequel, because that feels like it's gonna be super integral to the next game, and I was surprised they put that in the fucking DLC. So if you like the main game, just in general, for the people out there, don't skip on the DLC, because one of the storylines in there was like, what the fuck? Okay. So yeah, definitely surprising, and yeah, I hope, I wonder what they're gonna do with that in the next game. So yeah. Choo-choo.
I can't really say too much about Spider-Man, which is probably thankful for everybody. But I've only put a handful of hours into it, but I can say the swinging mechanics are just wonderful. Like you say, it's just really so much fun to swing from point A to point B. I think they absolutely fucking nailed that. It's brilliant. Swinging through the city, you really actually feel like Spider-Man. From what I can judge, the voice acting is pretty great. The combat is pretty satisfying, even though I remember the one thing, my abiding memory of this short time I played with Spider-Man was having a fight on the rooftop with some bad guys, and I kicked one off the rooftop. It was like the last final guy. I had defeated the other guys. The last final guy, I did this kind of like double kick move, kicked him off, and then stood on the side of the building and just watched him sail down to his death. And I just thought, man, that's harsh.
Spider-Man said enough with this bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, probably if you look closer, they stuck to the wall or some stuff.
No, he didn't. Yeah, that's the thing. That's usually what happens in the game, right? Usually you kick some guy and he ends up in this web cocoon. But this guy, I kicked him off so hard he just flew like miles, and I just literally saw him go all the way down to the floor. And the thing is, me as Spider-Man, I'm just stood there on the edge of the building watching him.
Yeah, go splat, bitch. There was probably some, I don't know, problem with the collision detection or something. He was probably supposed to get stuck to the side of a wall on the other side, like on another building, and then just missed that and just fell to the ground. So, yeah.
That's why I did it, to get a definitive look at if you could actually kill someone. And I kicked him really hard, really far away from the wall, and I just literally watched him just fly down to 90. I remember laughing about that for a long time. Peter Parker just then rocking with laughter there. He's just splattered someone. But yeah, it's a fun game. I will return to it. I really love Spider-Man. Spider-Man after Homecoming is probably my favorite superhero at this particular moment in time. So I'm looking forward to going back to that. But I have to say, there are a lot of games in between. I only played maybe 4 hours of Spider-Man. So what I'm going to do is when I go back to Spider-Man, I'm just going to restart the game basically from the beginning, and just play it like I haven't played it before. But there's a lot between me and Spider-Man. I think Persona 5 is between me and Spider-Man. So do you know what I mean? There is a point where I'm going to sit down and play that game, but it's a
long time away,
significant distance off from me, and I shouldn't have bought it. Yeah, there's only a finite amount of time I have to play video games, and I think Spider-Man suffers from that. So, oh my god, of war.
I was waiting for it. For it.
All right, Brack, what's next?
Do I have to make the reference? Should I say something about Chuchu being bald? And let's talk about another guy who was bald. But no, I didn't have to do that. But I still wanted to call Chuchu bald, so it's okay.
That's all right, vagina mouth. Continue. Actually, your beard is pretty trimmed. I can't call you vagina mouth anymore. But judging from your hairline, you're going to be joining the club soon, so fuck you. Anyway.
Yeah,
that looks worse.
It's bad.
It looks worse, Brack. Put it back.
Talk about the guy with a bad hairline. Kratos, the God of War. I think we've all played this game, actually. That's good. God of War from 2018. It was my favorite game of that year. It's hard to talk about it, because I love the story so much. I love the gameplay. It's one of those times where story and gameplay and atmosphere all work together so perfectly that there is no moment where it one thing stands in the way of the other. There's no moment where a guy gets shot 50 times in gameplay, but if he gets shot one time in a cutscene, he dies, right? And it's it's kind of takes me out of it. There's no point like that in God of War, because all of those stuff, all of the gameplay parts and the story parts just fit together perfectly, better than any other game I've actually played. And it's just like a great journey through this like wonderful, like beautiful looking world where you play as Kratos, and it really plays well with the way you remember, or at least I remember, the previous God of War games ending. Like you actually, it gives so much history to this character that I already from the start, I was like, interested in seeing where this goes. Like, what happened to this character? Why is he changed the way he has, and what has kept him that way? And is he ever gonna go back to this crazy rage monster that he used to be? And they actually use that really well in the game. There's some very emotional moments where he actually goes back to get his weapons from the original game, and you're like, oh my god, it's on now. This is like one of those perfect video game moments. And I'm sad if I spoiled it for you now. Sorry, people listening to it. I hope you finished the game already. What else can I say about it? It's interesting. This game feels like very influenced by an earlier game we've talked about, which is The Last of Us. It really set like this direction. The Last of Us was this direction for the way Sony is like going to make games and tell stories, right? Like they have this really focus on third person, like really character focused, story focused action games. And I think God of War is like the perfect example of that.
Also, another entry now in the list of Mad Lad Dad games.
Oh yeah, it's definitely it's definitely a Dad of Boy game. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's maybe a good example of like the games actually aging with like the audience, right? Like the people who are playing like the original God of War games is like violent, like all teenagers are now finally becoming dads, and they're like, oh man, now I'm like needing a emotional story game about being a dad.
Yeah, and they especially that part of the game is done really well, in my opinion. Like Kratos and Atreus, yes, and Atreus, like their connection, like not being familiar with each other in the beginning because Kratos hasn't been in Atreus' life. And then, like Last of Us, like you said, slowly forming a bond here. And, there's some parts that some people criticized wasn't too, in terms of Atreus' development, where he goes, he is very, let's say, very the opposite of Kratos in the beginning, in terms of always questioning, hey, why are we killing these people, and why are gods bad, and stuff like that. And then once he learns a certain thing about himself, he just like goes completely batshit insane for a while. But I feel like that for me, that's
shit for a little while.
Yeah, but that still worked for me because
well.
he had to take a lot of shit before that, and now this felt like for him like the moment that he could, and judging what his father told him before that, because Kratos is really shit at parenting. Oh, what a surprise!
There are some like beautiful moments to show that. Like you can actually see the subtlety. There's like this moment where like his son is really sad because they killed this deer, right? And his son had to kill him, and you can see like Kratos like moving his hand to his shoulder to try to comfort him, but he like it takes his hand back like before he actually does it, and you can actually see like you can see that he is like trying really hard to be a better dad, but he's really so bad at it, he doesn't really know what to do, and it's really very, for this, especially a god, very humanizing.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest surprise, because if you've played the other God of War games, Kratos as a character sucks. And they tried to do some stuff with that in God of War 3 a bit, but it didn't work so well, in my opinion. It was fine, but it wasn't something super special. And then when they went the full, like, character, story, drama heavy route in this game, I wondered if they even could pull that off. And yeah, Cory Barlog and his team, they did. It was fucking great, and great voice performances. And just the story was surprisingly well told. Just in general, like the things it sets up, the things that will come later. There will be a bunch of God of War games, but in that universe. But also how, like Brax said, how it picks up the stuff that happened in the past and actually gives it some weight and actually gives it some meaning in terms of what Kratos is all about and his development and his emotional, psychological baggage, all that stuff, which didn't really matter in the first game. In the first game, you were just a badass killing people. It was like the edgiest edgelord game that ever edgelorded.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of like 90s comics. Like it feels like Spawn or something.
Yeah, it feels like something that Rob Liefeld would have drawn.
Or Frank Miller.
And yeah, definitely. Or here, Mark Millar, here, the kick-ass guy. That feels like that kind of brand of cynicism and comedy and whatever. Like, the whole world is fucked, so I might as well be the biggest asshole to survive. Like that kind of shit. And like the new God of War game, like calls all of that bullshit, questions all of that. It's like, no, what the fuck? You were a piece of shit, and your quest wasn't justified at all. And I mean, everyone was an asshole, but you were also the biggest asshole. And yeah, that's cool. It's cool that actually you go and kind of diss the games, the previous games in your series to tell a really good story. Like, actually incorporate that in your story. Like, how shit your character was, and actually give him some development and making him a cool character and someone that you actually feel for, that you have an emotional connection to, and who also has, a great, emotional connection to another character in its story. And then, for the jokes, you have Mimir, the hat they carry on with them, and he's super funny. And yeah, god damn it. Like, this stuff, just the way that game is put together, and Bragg talked about the graphics, this is one of the PS4 showpieces. Like, you cannot believe how good that game looks. Like, Horizon Zero Dawn is the HDR show piece for me now, but before that was like God of War.
Spider-Man also looks beautiful in HDR, by the way.
Sure, of course, yes. But God of War, once you get the first time into... I forgot her name. The main female character. Don't want to give her who she actually is away, but once you meet her for the first time, that part of the game, how it looks, was so fucking breathtaking. And yeah, I like that game. And what we haven't really talked about yet, I think, is the combat is so good. I did not expect it. I mean, God of War combat was fine before it was like this basic hack and slash thing with some kind of combo mechanics in there that were decent.
It was also some stuff. The original like God of War combat was all about like area control. Like you had like big areas with multiple enemies, and you have you have really big swing attacks. And this is a lot different. This is very much about like attacking a single character and like maybe like try to push the other characters away while you like focus on one character. And it's a very different type of combat.
You got still area control stuff, and you got skills for that, but you also have like these weird these super great one-on-one encounters that are super tense and really hard, but also super rewarding, because every mechanic in this game just works really well. And you get optional boss fights by the end, a bunch of them against the Valkyries, and they test your mettle. But if you know how to use the mechanics in the game, your invincible frame. So okay, if I do this thing first, I can't be damaged for like small slimmers. So I'm gonna do that once the Valkyrie does that kind of attack, and then get maybe a heads up, can maybe get an advantage on her. It can do another attack that does major damage. It works really like a fighting game in a way, like Street Fighter or something like that. And it works. And that fight was super hard, but every time I got my ass handed to me, and I probably fought her, like the final Valkyrie, for, I don't know, 50 times or something at least. And usually I get super frustrated because I feel like the game is, fucking with me, is being unfair or stuff like that. But I always felt like it was my fault when I lost. Because okay, I didn't do that exactly right. So I'm going to do that better the next time. And I got back into the fight. And I tried again. And I tried again. And I tried. And eventually I beat her. And it was like, I was just jumping off from the couch, raising myself. Holy fucking shit, yeah, fuck you. It was one of the most rewarding moments ever. And it was so well designed. And I never felt like I wasted my time. Because I got consistently better. And the game taught me what to do. Kinda, because let me get better, not just run against the wall all the time. I got progressively, took very small steps, but got better at fighting. and then eventually beat her.
Yeah.
That's how it's supposed to go.
And if you, like me, don't want to, like, to force yourself to, like, the hyper difficult segments, you can just, like, go to... I played all on normal, but, like, on the final Valkyrie, it's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna put it on easy. And I kicked her ass.
Sure, why not? But yeah, even if you don't do that, I thought the fighting was a lot of fun. So, okay, some parts you have to get used to, like the camera controls. You lose lock on when you evade a certain way, and then if you don't know where the Valkyrie is, that can fuck you up pretty quickly. But even that, you can even circumvent that. You can get used to that, and it's never so frustrating. At least it wasn't for me that it like lets you completely rage quit the game. I always was like, okay, I see what I did wrong. I'm gonna try again, and eventually I got it. And I didn't expect that from God of War, because the first few God of War games, even though the combat wasn't that super complicated or difficult, had some really frustrating moments in there. And this game didn't have that for me. I thought that combat was super well thought out. I hope they don't like change too much about it. Maybe, put a few moves in there and things, but I want for a sequel this kind of combat again, and put some really awesome optional bosses in there again, that I can have that same experience I had with the Valkyries, because I really, really like the combat system in this game.
All right.
Yeah.
I think our favorite bald boy wants to say something.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, I give my 2 cents on God of War because I played it too. Yeah, fantastic, fantastic graphics, fantastic music, fantastic storyline, fantastic bosses, just everything fantastic about that game. I don't really have anything whatsoever. Oh wait, no. If I'm going to say anything negative about that game, some of the areas in that game were not quite as well fleshed out as some of the others. Like the Helheim area, some of that could. It's like some of the focus of the game was on certain areas, and other places it seemed like they. Occasionally, it seemed like they kind of ran out of time. It seemed like they wanted to do more, but they didn't quite get the time to actually finish off what they wanted to do. Like there's a whole sequence where you're on the barge and you're defeating enemies because they're trying to put out the fires on your barge or whatever, because it's like a flying barge. That just kind of sucks. But anyway, I'm getting into negatives. That's a small wrinkle in an otherwise perfect game, because I absolutely fucking love God of War. Like you say, it's a game that really takes advantage of its lineage. It takes all of the stuff that happened in the previous games. I mean, granted, I'm no expert of God of War, but I've played God of War 3 a bit. But like, you get the feeling that this was like a fucking nasty, fucking egotistical dickhead, who did really like terrible things in the past, but is also really strong. And now in this game, he's on the path of redemption, right? But the whole thing is like he's doing the Unforgiven thing, which is just badass, where he's like he's a fucking badass. He knows he's a fucking badass, but he's trying to live a different style of life. And you're waiting for that moment where he just, because he's such a badass and he can kick all kinds of ass, where he just rages up, and you're just waiting for that the whole game. It's just awesome. So I love that about him. Where his son doesn't, his son has some kind of idea, but doesn't really know how much of a fucking badass his father is. It's like, that's a real pleasure to be had from that. Do you know what I mean? To be actually playing a character like that, where, that at some point you're going to hulk up and go, Rah! You're going to show your son what a fucking badass you are. Like, there's real pleasure in that as well. Great bosses. I love the way that the overworld, the lake area, is like fucking Disneyland. I love it. It's like you go off to each individual area, and there's some like magical kind of like ride to go on in that area, or something really interesting.
It all connects to each other, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. With the hub world, literally just like Disneyland.
I actually read interviews where they said they looked at like Disneyland in the way they were designing their overworld, and so it's like really fun. And yeah, I think like the way they do backtracking in this game is like you're never bored. Like you never like, even just like if you go like on the lake, there's always like your headless your head. I'm not sure what the name of the character is, but he's like Mimir. He's like telling like a cool story about the Norse mythology. And it's like, this is a cool story. Like, and even though you get to like your destination, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna wait for him to finish his story before getting out of the boat because I'm enjoying this so much.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's wonderful, and just like even the not the story related things, but the like more ambient stuff, like like ridding this particular ruin of enemies or whatever the fuck on that lake. It's all fun, and like I couldn't rest until I had literally like done all of those things, like lighting all the fires, for example, on the lifts and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Those lift things, those like elevator places. Yeah, like lighting all the fires is like, I felt really obsessed about that. Like I had to do all that like extra stuff in that game. But ultimately, the great story, of course, wonderful and really subtle in places in an otherwise over the top game. But like just the combat, like Human Metal said, the combat is absolutely just crackerjack. It's fantastic. It never once ever in the entirety of the game never ever gets boring, not even once, no matter how many enemies you put down. Like in like other games like Uncharted, to be honest, after a few hours, I'm fucking bored of the combat. And to be honest, the more I can avoid the combat in that game, the happier I am. The less people I kill, the happier I am. But in God of War, it's so fantastic to fight and kill things, and that action where you throw your axe and you get that kind of visceral like thunk, where it hits the enemy and you pull it back and it's like rush. Do you know what I mean? It comes back to your hand.
Yeah.
It just feels like, even though you're doing it with a controller in your living room, it's almost like you can actually fucking feel the weight of that thing. You know what I mean? It's brilliant.
While playing the game, there's like moments where I'm just like throwing axes at stuff, like just seeing if they get hit, and just feeling the emotion of like having it fly back and just like throwing it into the water. And how long does it take for the axe to fly back? It's just such a fun element.
Yeah, that's fucking badass, man. Oh, just the combat in that is just brilliant. Love it.
I have one flaw. That's like the only flaw I actually had with the game, which is that they could have used like a little bit more diverse like boss fights. Like that's what the one thing God of War was known for a lot before this new one. Is like every boss fight is like gigantic and it's like insane and it's like it tops itself like all the time. It's like, and this one like you have a lot of repeat trolls and it's like a little bit sad.
But the first cinematic boss fight was really like the showstopper moment. That's like one of the first things you experience in that game, and it fucking blew me away.
Yeah.
It's like, holy shit.
Yeah,
it's sad. They should have had more of that. That's true.
Yeah. Like the first, like I know that sequence you're talking about, and that's like it's like that will be the final boss in most games. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's the first boss.
Yep.
Yeah,
just in terms of cinematography and everything. So yeah, holy shit.
And the bad guy's so good at this. Like Jeremy Davis, I think, is the actor who plays him, and it's like such a like punchable guy that you really want to beat the shit out of him. He's just like he's super powerful, but he also looks like a slimy meth head. So like really,
he basically plays the same character he played in Justified, no, only in Norse mythology style. So
I
good
also
stuff.
One thing I love about that game as well, and minor spoiler alert, although I guess we're already talking about spoilers here anyway, but the first time you fight that character isn't so different from the last time you fight him either. So
yeah, that's true.
But you learn so much through playing the game that you are naturally stronger than him at that point in the game. Do you know what I mean? So it's like there's a kind of weird natural balance to that. I mean, he has a few more attacks in the final battle, but to be honest, that final battle isn't particularly challenging for you. But I think that's reflected in the story that you've gone through. You know, that first battle was like really epic, but at the final battle, it's like there's no doubt that you're going to defeat him. Do you know what I mean? In that particular sequence, because it doesn't really hold the same challenge anymore. But that's natural because that's the progression, that's the story, that's the progression your character has gone in. I really enjoyed that subtlety of storytelling. It was like, well, this guy was a bit of a pushover, but you know what? You know, that's the same character I thought back then, and now I've just kicked his ass because I've learned so much about, you know, who he is, and I've like honed my skills or whatever. I really enjoyed that about that. However, when you finally, at the end of the game, there's a major spoiler alert, so if you haven't played God of War, Jesus Christ, go do that. But at the end of the game, like, it was too subtle for me. Like, because it's God of War, right? So I expected some fucking giant dragon or something, some fucking like Zeus or something to pop up at the end of the mountain or something, and to have one final gigantic epic battle. But it didn't do that. It went the subtle route instead and had a kind of more cathartic ending. And whilst I can appreciate that from an artistic standpoint, I was a little bit disappointed that they did
see that. I really
have some fucking giant
really
monster.
liked it.
I liked it as well.
I mean, we still gonna get that. So this feels kind of a bit like a prequel to the story that's still gonna happen.
Yeah,
because the guy he fought in this wasn't really his gonna be main antagonist. Like, Zeus didn't really appear in the first game.
or Thor.
Yeah.
Zeus or Thor weren't there. You fought his sons though. Played.
No, I mean Zeus in the original War, and
yeah.
Oh, the thing
Odin and Thor weren't here.
They're sewing. But the thing is, like playing this game, right? You really want to fight Zeus. You really want to.
Yeah, sure.
So
yeah, I get it.
It's sowing seeds real hard, and I love that. That's great.
For the sequels, Choo-Choo. The sequels.
Yeah, you fought the minor gods now. You got up the league. Like you're going to Thor, then Iron Man, then Hulk. You fight all of them. You know what?
They're gonna keep Odin for the last game, however many.
Anthony Hopkins, Hannibal Lecter, like all of them. But you know what I found funny? Funny
bad
about
guy in God of War was basically Falcon.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What about funny about Thor? You have like Thor's two sons, right? You fight, who were voiced by. Guess who were the two voice actors?
One of them, Nolan North and Troy Baker, probably.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you wouldn't recognize them at all.
Modi and I forgot what the other guy's name was.
I thought it was quite funny when I found that out.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, that's awesome.
So, yeah, it all comes full circle. That was also a cool boss fight, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we needed more of those.
And I like that one as well a lot, because it's like it focused on your relationship with your son during like the boss fight. It's like, oh, this is so smartly done. Like you really see the protective side of this guy during this fight.
Yeah.
And he's very useful as well in that fight. Like it's not like sometimes with those like type of games like The Last of Us, a lot of the time, but you feel like you have to protect this person, right? And here you do as well. But like at the end of the game, like he is like also really useful for you. Like you can't beat a lot of fights without him anymore, because like he has all his own powers and he has special arrows, and there are some moments where you're like without him, and it also actually like gameplay wise feels a little bit empty during those segments.
Yeah, Game of Thrones. What the fuck? I got Game of Thrones on the mind right now. God of War, absolutely amazing game. Yeah, I think we could all definitely agree on that. But hey, that's our opinion on the best games of the last decade. If you want to disagree with us and show off your top 5 or top 10 or top 15 games of the last decade, please sound off in the comment section. And please join us next time you try to divide 69 perfectly and end up contemplating pie. A big old pussy pie.